I'd like to call the work session to order for April 25th, 2022. Will the clerk please call the roll call?
Let the record reflect that all members are present with Councilmember Stip participating via telephone.
Okay, just so everybody know, since Bill's calling in on the phone, I'm going to call on him first on all of them, okay? All right, we have one item on the agenda tonight. I would like to remind council that staff will be pausing intermittently to answer any questions. Discussions on the city manager's recommended 2023 fiscal annual budget and fiscal 23 through 27 capital improvement plan. You're up, Doug.
Thank you, and I am going to take the pleasure of just turning it right over to Ryan to
There
lead
you
this
go.
evening.
Easy enough. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for joining us on night 2 of our fiscal year 2023 City Manager's Recommended Budget. Just a quick recap of what we went over last meeting, previous Monday. We'd like to think of what we covered was more of what we would consider our base budget. It's what we did last year. How did what we did last year change into this? Tonight, more of the focus will be on supplementals, which are new requests from what we did last year, as well as CIP, some of which, actually a large majority of which, existed in our 5-year CIP last year, plus the new projects that will be added to that 5-year CIP. So on the screen in front of you, you'll see a brief overview of the presentation. So like we just said, we'll start off with going over just looking at department budgets, but the focus will more be on the supplemental asks and how they relate to those budgets. Within that, we will talk about our personnel and FTEs. After that, we will dive into our CIP. So supplementals first, CIP second. In the CIP, we'll give an overview, we'll touch on existing projects, and then we'll dive into new projects, and we've kind of bucketized them in kind of an easier to digest way because it's a lot of dollars that we're looking at. So to kick off supplementals, what is our guiding principles or framework that we look at when we're going through the budget process? This is just what we as an executive team and as a budget department look at to determine whether we want to fund something or don't want to fund something. Fiscal responsibility, financial solvency, being in compliance with all of our budget policies, proper use of funding sources. We want to utilize data whenever possible to make decisions to support our requests. We want to align our requests with our strategic plan and all of our master plans that we have available. And we want to also look at the downside. If we don't fund something, then what happens to the city? Because you can look at things both ways as you're going through the process. So supplementals go back to, we started this way back in October, November timeframe. And how that kind of goes is departments will come up with a list. They'll get with their executive team members, say, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Those supplementals get formalized by submitting into the budget system. We then review them with the departments as meetings individually to get clarification, make sure we understand everything that's going on. Follow-up meetings are scheduled as needed. Then we get together as an executive team and decide what gets funded and what doesn't. And ultimately that leads to tonight and what we're presenting as far as the supplementals. This slide here is just the transition slide, if it looks familiar, from what we did on Monday night, leading us into the dollars that we're looking at. So we're going to dive into each department, but ultimately it's going to be a lot of numbers and a lot of requests, but ultimately it adds up to about $18.6 million of additional requests. $9 million of that is ongoing, about $9.5 million of that is one time. Just for reference, last year we had about $20.5 million in total of supplemental requests, 13 million of which were ongoing and 7.5 million of which were one time. So this is the first department. We'll start with the easy one. And I want to point you to the page numbers you'll see on the slides on the screen. So if you've got your budget books in front of you, you can go through and kind of follow along with us as we go. Different departments, depending on how big they are, might have 1 or 2 pages in the budget book. They might have 5 to 10 pages, so you might have to scroll to get through it as we go along, but that'll at least show you where you need to start to follow along with us. So again, the easy one, mayor and council, the general fund operating budget is $500,000. That includes $100,000 of special projects, and there were no supplementals requested. After each department, we will stop and ask questions. So this is the first department. If anybody has any questions. If not, we can move forward on to the next one.
I just have a quick,
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'm just, did we use any of the 100,000 last year? I think we all kind of forget about that as it goes through, that we have it for special projects, and I don't know how to keep that on our radar, but I don't think we've used it for the last couple years.
I'm not aware of us using any dollars this year. I can't speak for past years, but it is something, yeah, it kind of falls off, but it is loaded into the budget and is available. So,
Did
yeah.
we lower the amount? It used to be 250, wasn't it?
This is just a piece of it. This is the same amount that you've had for mayor and council supported contingency. It's always been in there. There's an additional piece of $250,000. It adds up to, sorry, Doug.
That's right. Ryan started answering the question on contingencies, but on the special projects fund, it used to be a higher amount.
Yes, it was.
But a couple of years ago, council had said that we would do is replenish it to $100,000 whenever it was used. So 100,000 is what the threshold it's at. If any of it gets used the next fiscal year, it would be brought back up to 100,000.
Okay, Sherry, the only time I remember us using it is when we spent it for speed bumps for North Subdivision. And that's been many years ago.
Doug is here as my historical reference, so when I can't answer anything that's happened, I'm going to refer to him.
Doug
So.
can do it, okay.
If I could, I think we also use that for the White Tanks Conservancy at some point. So those are the only two projects I'm aware of that came out of that fund.
Did we just make a donation or join them or something?
Correct. It was a donation. 30,000 comes to mind, but don't hold me to that. But yes, it was a donation.
Good, thank you.
Go ahead.
So our city manager's office budget, $4.4 million of general fund operating. There's additionally $423,000 related to our CDBG. The 16 recommended positions, if you note those positions, those are including the supplementals that we're requesting. So they're not in addition to, assuming all the supplementals we're requesting get funded, that's what the department budgets, the FTE account will be. So on the right side, you can see key supplementals. These are the ones we wanted to bring to your attention. Not every supplemental will be listed on the slide. You will be able to see them in the book if you have additional questions on something not listed. We kind of focused on, number one, FTEs. So I would say 100% of the FTEs are listed in there. So you'll be able to see every one of those positions. And also bigger dollar or special, if there's a reason it's on there, we didn't want to just list everything. So we used a prioritization to put what was actually on the slides. If you look at what's on city manager's office slides, you'll note the little tick mark. A lot of these have to do with our COVID response funds. Because those are funds that diminish and they go away, we're going from that. It was an original $10 million approximately. We're down to, I believe, a little under $4 million left. So I wanted to point out specifically when we were using some of those funds. I believe there is we check in about every 6 months, and we're due for a check-in here very soon again to update you on the status of where those funds are going. But this is the perfect opportunity for me to steal some of their thunder and talk about what we have in the budget related to those funds. So there are two positions, and those positions we have earmarked to use these COVID response funds for 3 years. After 3 years, they will then be generally funded on an ongoing basis after that. This first position that you see, the Community Partnership Coordinator position, will be utilized to manage programs associated with CDBG, community funding, additional COVID response activities, and the new neighborhood services pilot proposed to be implemented in fiscal year 2023. The other position listed there is an admin assistant for neighborhood services. That one will assist with work-related neighborhood services, strategic planning, performance measurement. It would include additional support for CDBG, community funding, and COVID response efforts. We believe these two positions are the minimum FTE counts we need to be able to get these pilot programs up and going. Also listed on the slide here is our community mental health pilot program. This pilot program is designed to increase the community's access to mental health services. The program would include creating or expanding peer support groups, provide for substance use and misuse services in education, and implement efforts to bring mental health services to schools, workplaces, and other gathering locations. Our household community gardens pilot program. This implementation is for supporting low-income residents' ability to meet their basic needs by increasing access to fresh fruits and vegetables through community and/or household gardens. All projects would need to be located in low to moderate income areas or be designated to serve low to moderate income households such as a church or school installing a garden and then donating or distributing the produce accordingly. We also have an online grant management system. That is the last of the requests related to our COVID response funds. This subscription is a tool that will automate our community grant funding process. It'll involve accepting, reviewing, processing payments, and reporting. These are currently very manual endeavors that we do. The use of the subscription will automate it. It'll integrate with Munis, which is our financial reporting system. Currently, it's kind of a hunt and peck between our eCivis program, which is more of a reporting, which is more of a research tool right now, Munis, which is the financials, and then ad hoc spreadsheets that we have. So this will combine that all into one. And last but not least, we have our new resident app. So this app we purchased back in 2014, and another company has since bought the app, and they are planning to discontinue support for it, so we don't think we are going to get any additional updates. We know that there are glitches within the app. It doesn't necessarily integrate well with the systems that we have. Our contract expires with them in March of 2023, which makes now the perfect time to consider an additional option and bring one that might be a little user-friendly to the community. Those are the highlights of the supplementals for the city manager's office. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Councilmember Kano?
Not a question really, but just a comment. It's very exciting with the convergence of the COVID response funds, our human service master plans and CBDG. We have a really strong foundation for something new. And I know that we've had to add administrative positions to manage that, but I think this is a big step forward for City of Goodyear.
Anybody
I
else?
have 4 questions.
Go ahead,
What
Councilman Campbell.
What was our total APRIA funds?
Our total, what I'm sorry, Councilmember
The
Campbell.
APRIA funds, the total.
The total amount of ARPA funds that we received from the feds was $10.3 million.
And we have 4 million left.
And what we did, we've got the 10.3 million of ARPA funds. And then from the majority of that, we use freed up general fund dollars to come up with our COVID response. And the COVID response, we've got $3.9 million remaining of the resident support portion of it that we had dedicated for resident support. And that's where this funding for this would come from, is that $3.9 million.
All right, so for each of these positions that we're going to start with the COVID funds, we're funding them for 3 years using their money, using the federal money, and then we'll decide one-on-one if we want to continue it. Once you start something, it's very hard to stop it.
Correct. We are not using the federal funds for this. We're using our COVID response, which is the general fund dollars that we've freed up because of the ARPA funding. So this is city general fund money that will be doing it. And the intent is after the 3 years, we would definitely evaluate it as we do with a lot of things and see if it should continue or not.
Okay. This online grant management system, is this a proven tool? Do we know this will work? We're not just trying it to see if it'll work.
I don't believe we've actually finished the RFP process with the system. The ones that we have in mind, we have done extensive research to make sure they will integrate with our current systems that we have.
And will that be in the neighborhood services office or will it be in finance?
That will be in the neighborhood services office.
Are we going to have someone that's going to know how to use it?
Yes. So part of our community partnership coordinator that we have will probably assist with that. We have Christina who manages our grants internally. She will be able to use that, and our admin assistant. They will probably all be users within that system. We also have our current eCivis system has a user from each department who has access to that so they can submit grants on their own. Our grant, Christina has kind of been the gatekeeper of training the different departments on how to use the system, and I expect this one to be set up very similar to that.
Okay, I just don't want us to have to add another position to do just that. If we're going to already add 3 others.
Correct.
We ought to be able to cross-train so that it stays within the department that it's intended to be used for.
Understood.
And my last question is on the mental health pilot program. Is this the start of our city putting out a social services office? Or, I don't quite understand this. I mean, everybody needs mental health, but how did we get to this point so quickly that we're going to give $200,000 towards it? And we don't even have an established program in Goodyear.
So this is part of our Human Services Master Plan, was the recommendation. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to work with other businesses in the community to help assist and see how they can assist versus necessarily taking everything in-house. So we're going to see what other businesses have to offer and decide how much is coming from the city of Goodyear versus how much are we getting assistance from other departments. So that's still up in the air. This is the pilot program. It's very much to be determined in the future, and we're open to any feedback or suggestions that you may have related to that.
Well, I just was wondering if we're going to go to like New Leaf and establish programs and see if we have to provide additional funding to them to take care of our population. That's what I'm asking. Because we give some of these, our community funding grants already, so I don't know how this is going to work. And I'm not real comfortable with it right now because I don't know enough about it. And $200,000 is a lot of money to start with something we don't know anything about.
Yeah, I might
Get somebody
bring
up here.
Dennis here to for a lifeline on to give a little more detail on that.
Sorry. Mayor and Councilmember Campbell, so the intent with this program is that we would go through some sort of an application process where we would solicit responses from community organizations that provide these services. So it could be nonprofits, it could be schools and other organizations that we would then contract with to provide programs and services over the course of the fiscal year.
All right, so then if we do that and we do contract with them, then they would be ineligible to get the community funding. We don't want to fund twice, is what I'm getting at. And it sounds like we're going to go after the people that are the nonprofits and the services that are already provided to us that we help fund now. So,
Mayor and Councilmember Campbell, I think that would be at the council's discretion when you're making decisions about the community funding and which of those applications you choose to fund. Our intent is that this would improve access and enhance the services in this area, not just maintain what's already existing today.
is it just for behavioral health?
Mayor and Councilmember Campbell, yes, for mental health support programs,
Okay.
Which could include peer support models, as well as counseling models, substance abuse and misuse therapy, those sorts of items.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Bray?
To that point, Jenna, yes, I do share a concern with Councilmember Campbell. I think that getting into that particular area of work for the city is probably not the best idea. I have no problem with, looking for the 501c3s and the people that are specialized in those areas to do that work. I mean, it's work that has to be done. I would hate to see the city spending time developing programs that they would like to see rather than just saying, hey, there's a program that's working that solves this issue and we cut them a check. And I think that's, at least from my perspective, that's where I would like to focus. The same goes with the community gardens, and thank you for walking me through it. I know it works the same way. There's a lot of people that do community garden programs, and more so, I think it's actually a very narrow view. I think that if you wanted to do something that's probably would impact more citizens is just food availability. Whether it's elderly or low income, are they getting, the access to food that they need, period? Not necessarily garden scenarios, but, Meals on Wheels or whatever it is, because we kind of have both ends of the spectrum in this city. And so I would like to see that kind of be the focus. And I think what concerns me is the term pilot program, like it's going to turn into something much greater. It doesn't sound like that, but I just don't think those are areas where city staff should be spending a lot of time. I don't disagree with, spending some tax dollars over in that area, but I would limit the staff time on those.
Thank you. Before you begin, I kind of pick up on your food issue. I was and Councilmember Campbell, we were both at the ribbon cutting for the pantry, food pantry. And while I was there, I guess a little over an hour, 250 cars drove through for food because they had a food there as well. I don't know how many pounds. They had the bread, they had the vegetables, they had all of it. And 250, so obviously there is a need out there. See 250 cars go through, but I tend to agree with you, Councilman Bray, if we can find, I think the bottom line is to get food in the hands of those that need it, you know, type of thing. And apparently, unfortunately, right now, there's a lot of that, that a lot of people need that. I was amazed at 250 cars coming through in 1 hour, picking up food. So with that, go ahead and continue.
All right, our next department is our legal department. Our general fund operating budget is $2.8 million, and we'll have 15 recommended FTEs, with 2 of those being supplementals this year. The first is a real estate services specialist position, and this position would be in charge of planning, organizing, and completing property sale and acquisitions, lease and license management of city-owned property, easement dedication and/or abandonments, prepare council action items, maintain property databases, and assist our real estate coordinator. CIP projects with telecommunications management, having to do with our fiber agreements that we have placed a heavy strain on our current coordinator's workload, and telecom is a new responsibility that has taken up substantial time in research and development, at least getting things started. The other position is an assistant city prosecutor. And this will allow us to keep pace with caseloads as our city grows. As we grow with our criminal justice partners, meaning court and PD, it kind of goes through the justice system continuum. The more police we have, the more caseloads we have, the more court FTEs we need, the more prosecutors we need, and the cycle kind of continues itself. Does anybody have any questions on the 2 FTE asks?
Any questions?
I've got one question.
Go ahead, Councilmember Campbell.
Okay, so they've asked for a legal assistant, but it is not in the city manager's budget, yet a contract employee is for more money than what it would be to hire a legal assistant. So what is the thinking of that?
Okay.
So the legal assistant request was for a full-time permanent ad.
Right.
What is being requested is 91,000 of contractual services,
Right.
which will be on an as-needed basis. So it's really to get a feel for what that actual workload is, to address the actual workload, to see if it's more of a peak shaving thing as opposed to an ongoing need for a position. That'll give us the time to be able to evaluate it moving forward.
And then determine if we need a
Correct.
full-time or not. I don't want us to just always contract out. I think it's cheaper for us as a city to get a full-time person in there
Correct.
once we determine that that's what's needed.
That's what's needed,
Yeah,
correct. And
so-
the fact that there's 91,000 in there doesn't necessarily mean we would spend
Right, it's
91,000
up to-
either. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kano? You good? Go ahead.
Our next department is Municipal Court. They have a general fund operating budget of $1.9 million, and the supplemental requests relate to 3 FTEs, all of which are court specialist 2 positions. So this is along the same lines of what we just talked about in legal, increased caseloads. We did a pilot back in 2021 to see if our current staffing was sufficient to allow us to run a second docket. That result showed that we were not able to reduce our backlog that we currently have with our current staffing levels. So because of that, we've recommended that we add 3 court specialists to that to help get into that backlog and to support the second docket. That this will allow us to do that from a court perspective.
Any questions?
Mayor, this is Bill.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. You know, as I'm listening to these requests, the requests from legal, et cetera, we're talking about this, well, we think we're going to need more people. We're adding more police officers. We think this, we think that. Do we have data that backs up these requests, or is it just, are we doing this all on intuition?
So we do have data to back up our requests. For example, if you look at the prosecutor, so going back to the legal department, in 2019, the city's attorney's office managed about 1,700 cases. In 2021, we've seen about a 40% increase in cases from that. Over the past 5 years, our DUIs, which are very labor intensive, are up 150% approximately. Domestic violence cases are up 53%. So all of these additional cases, that shows that our police are out there actually doing their jobs, bringing people in, and it trickles downstream, so to speak. If there's any specific data points that you're looking for, Councilmember Stip, we'd be more than happy to see if we have those available.
No, I think this is a dovetail into the conversation that we'll have in June about performance measurement. If we had 2 cases and we now have 6 cases, if we're doing it strictly on percentage, we've had a significant jump. Now, sometimes 6 is horrible, but I think maybe perhaps, I guess I'm trying to set the table for the conversation about performance measurement, and not just looking at counts, but looking at time and effectiveness and things along that line. I don't have an objection to the requests, but I think we're going to need to start seeing these perhaps presented in the future with a little bit more meat behind it, and talk about it from a performance perspective, not percentages, but we went from 1,000 cases to 1,900 cases, and a case that is 3 hours long, on average, blah blah blah. And I think that tends to be a little bit more meaningful than straight percentages. We get lost in that piece, but that's all I've got on this. I don't have any other comments until much farther down the agenda.
Go ahead, Councilmember Loretano.
Thank you. You mentioned a backlog with the courts, and I assume trickle down. And I know with COVID now things are starting to move back into the system. What is the backlog, how long it is, and were those 3, by the time they get up and running, help alleviate it, or are those 3 just going to maintain? I mean, what's the backlog?
The idea is that the 3 ads will allow us to cut into that backlog and basically get caught up. I know that we're currently not meeting our internal time standards, is what the courts has been telling us. We've had to start putting caps on criminal arrangements. We've been putting time into our online dispute resolution program as well. There's been a lot going on. So that was what the pilot last year was to test to see. But based on the recommendation, these 3 FTEs should be able to get us to where we need to be. I don't have a time frame exactly as to how long that will take. But that backlog should continue to shrink.
Your phone a friend
You've
is there
got
too.
Crystal behind you there.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Mayor and Council, he's absolutely correct. We are seeking to address not only the backlog from court activity picking back up post-COVID, but also incorporating our various modes of appearance methods. So telephonics do slow down the process. We also have our scanners being installed this Wednesday. So we are hoping that as we shift our processes to be a little more paperless, that our end goal aligns with the court's goals of updating our procedures to be a little more streamlined. We hope by the end of the fiscal year we would not have an existing backlog of fiscal year 23. So that is our goal. We really can't say based on the activity what our time frame is for catching up to the backlog.
And those 3 will also help you once they get on board to staff that second docket? Is that the
That
idea
is our
too?
main goal. We did pilot it last June, and we were spread far too thin to be able to run 2 courtrooms because then everything up front kept backing up. Phone calls, judges box processing, everything that was being processed by a courtroom team. If they were in the courtroom, then we were seeing a backlog out at the desks. So this entire team would allow us to have a fully functional second courtroom in operation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bray, you okay?
Actually, to that point, so what does the backlog look like today? And so the theory is that you would get somebody on in July, and you think you could clean that backlog up by the end of the year?
Thank you for the question. It will depend on what type of skill set the individuals come in with that we hire, whether they're starting training, they're able to work in a courtroom right away or not. So that is part of the component we factor into timeline. We are backlogged in what are called time standards, which is our goal that's set by the Arizona Supreme Court on reaching a disposition on a case, specifically in DUIs. Those are very time intensive. They involve a lot of continuances. There's a lot of impacts on the time delays with blood results coming back. So we would place a focus on trying to become compliant with those specific cases in the courtroom environment. And also we have about a 30-day backlog sometimes when we are very short-staffed or we have absences by our team members. Processing responses from a judge on a criminal matter can sometimes fall within 10 to 30 days on our worst. And so we would seek to have less than 10 days, ideally 3 to 5, on processing responses on all our criminal matters, motions, orders, continuances, things like that.
So we are currently out of compliance by the Supreme Court standards on
With
DUIs.
specifically with DUIs, yes, we track those quarterly. We're mandated to report them annually. We track them quarterly and see how we can improve. So just as of, for example, last week, we started making adjustments to our continuance policy for DUIs.
And how far out of whack are we on?
We're about 23% below the standard currently on DUIs where we want to be. And that is quite honestly the worst we've been at this point. It's just very difficult to move those cases. When we're competing with telephonic appearances, we can only handle one phone call at a time. Essentially, we can't have a judge on the phone. So we need more judges, we need more courtroom personnel so we can move these cases quicker through their court appearances. And DUIs are very time intensive.
And then on the portion about the 30 days that we're taking to respond to motions or any of that, typically is a 5 to 10 day, and we're running.
And that's our best practice goal. We really, like all of our records requests and requests we receive, we seek to respond anywhere from 2 days to a max of 10 days, depending on the nature of the request. And that's a standard we set for ourselves. Ideally, we'd love to do it same day, but we know that we can only work so quickly. But we are beyond where we would like to see ourselves. And so we've been expending in a lot of our budgetary requests, expending overtime in order to even get to a 15 to 12 day turnaround. But again, it fluctuates based on staffing availability and the demand. One day you could get 5 motions, another day you could get 30 motions. And so it fluctuates based on the caseload and the case activity.
And in your opinion, are we catching up because of COVID, or we're trying to deal with all the new processes we have that came out of COVID, the electronics, the phone, and all of that?
My professional opinion in our court is that it's primarily just trying to keep up with the caseload activity. We were really fortunate as a court when we talked to our sister cities. We didn't have the extensive backlog that other courts had because we never stopped operating. I mean, Judge Galindo would work out of the break room if she had to during the height of COVID. We never closed as a court. We kept moving. So really, it's just the increase in our caseload. We have, our stats show how our caseload has increased. We have a fairly good appearance rate with our defendants, so that means they're showing up and we're processing their cases. If they fail to appear, it goes to corrective action, but if they show up, it's a lot more work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We good? All right, go ahead.
Next, we're moving on to the City Clerk Department. And the supplementals that we are highlighting, there's one FTE request for a city clerk specialist, and that position will provide increased support for workload and be responsible for agendas, minutes, boards and commissions, special events, liquor licenses, and elections, and assist with prepping for our records digitization project, which is the second supplemental. So this records digitization project is to, like it says, digitize large city documents such as rolled plans that take up large amounts of physical space. It'll cover any other departments where it makes sense to digitize records that would otherwise need to be moved to Civic Square. Records which are set to be destroyed in the near future will be left alone, with priority given to documents with longer retention periods. We'll utilize 2 contract part-time employees and a large portable scanner that will allow for the ability to take the scanner to where the documents are versus having to take the documents to where the scanner is. And then after that, those documents will be scanned into our open text records management system, which will be searchable and accessible. Does anybody have any questions on the city clerk?
Councilmember Stip?
No, I have none.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
I would like to say this digitization project wins the award for the best supplemental name. It is Project Tron, T-R-O-N, which is our technological records organization necessary. So, dubbed by me, so if that means anything.
I thought there was a movie called that, but I could read.
Moving on to the finance department. The supplementals that we chose to highlight, the first is the capital projects audit. So this is to conduct an in-depth audit of 3 to 4 major capital projects. Specific focus in the audit will be on compliance with procurement processes, contract management and compliance, accurate and timely recording and processing of transactions, proper payment and funding, and proactive project management to mitigate risks. The idea was first brought up by the Council Audit Committee and will tease out best practice recommendations in all areas and help identify areas of weakness to help guide where we can best allocate our resources moving forward related to the CIP.
Any questions?
The other 2, really quickly, are our bonfire software. It's our procurement system. And this is going to allow us to basically have an end-to-end software for our procurement RFP and bidding process. Currently, some of it is still managed on an Access database, believe it or not, and it will allow us to keep track of that and respond in a more timely manner to outside bidders for our projects. That is one piece of the software. There's another software, separate one, sorry, but I combined them into one bullet point. Another debt management book software. So we manage over $400 million of outstanding principal that is, again, currently being tracked for the most part manually on spreadsheets. And with compliance from external sources, there's a lot of room for manual error. So this will, again, put it into a system that has the ability to talk with Munis and will manage from end to end payment schedules, debt refunding, updating amortization schedules, allow us to be proactive in reporting on that debt versus having to scramble and save our team a lot of time. Any additional questions on? Yes.
Councilmember Campbell?
I have a question for Doug. In your professional opinion, Doug, do you feel that our computer services and our programs in the finance department are exactly what you need to have us move forward? Or do we need more?
Exactly what we need, no, but they definitely do the job. We are adding the items that we do need. The 2 items you see up here, procurement and debt book, are the ones that are at the forefront of it. Our core financial system absolutely is what we need, how we need it, performs the way we need it to do. There's always room for improvement on the user interface and so on, and that's what we're really going to be looking at, but the core functionality is there.
I just want us to be able to say that we have moved ahead of where we were than we were 10 years ago, when we couldn't do half of the stuff we're doing now, and with our computer systems, and we really need to be on the forefront, and you've got to spend the money because it's not going to be cheap, but we need to make sure that our IT programs are exactly what we need to service our residents completely, and to keep track of all of the programs and the money that we have.
And to that, we definitely have that core availability, and we are working diligently with the IT department, not only in finance, but across the organization to make sure that not only do we have the software and the availability, but that we can start having it all talk to each other and get the information we need and get the data we need to present to council.
That's really important. So
Yes.
thank you for being on top of that. And we expect y'all to tell us when you need these things, because we don't know until there's a problem. And we'd rather know before there's a problem. I mean, I would rather know before there's a problem. I think everybody else would too.
You're right.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kano? Anything? No? No. Councilmember Stip?
No, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Next is the Human Resource Department. The supplementals that we are calling out are both FTE related. The first is a senior HR business partner, and this position will provide additional business partner to support the departments, as well as add capacity to our deputy director position by taking over their prior business partner responsibilities. So the deputy will move up and rescind her business partner responsibilities to this senior HR business partner that will be hired. This existing business partner will also manage all the other business partners within the city, so be reporting up to that person as opposed to the deputy city manager going forward. In addition to that, there's a staff assistant request. This is a part-time position. It's 19 hours if you do the math. 19 hours divided by 40 is almost 47%, so it's 0.47 of an FTE that we're adding for this position. And this HR position will assist with front desk responsibilities, scanning, filing, administer premium benefits. This will roll up under the benefits team, compensation and benefits, as opposed to our HR business partner chain of command. Does anybody have any questions on the HR requests?
Councilmember Stip?
No, I still got a couple more departments to go.
I have one quick question.
Councilmember Campbell?
Can you tell me what Goodyear Grows is, the citywide? What is this? It's a mentoring program, but for who? Or do we know?
Thank you, Councilmember Campbell. Goodyear Grows is a program where we're mentoring 30 mid to high-level employees throughout the city. They're being mentored by directors and deputy directors. These are individuals who are interested in growing with the city, and we're meeting on a regular basis with their mentors and on a quarterly basis with all the mentees, and providing input and access to resources to help them with their growth with the city.
Is this for upward mobility within the
It does address upward mobility and any other initiatives and/or goals that they may have for their growth.
Okay, but it's just for our folks that are already employed within the city system?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
thank you very much. I had not heard about it. I couldn't find anything on it, so thank you.
Councilmember Bray?
Yes, on the senior partner, the way that it was explained, I just want to understand it. So I know each department has their HR person. It sounded like we stuck another person in there before you get to the deputy director. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the theory behind it is they would manage all of that. It's just too much of a workload for the deputy to take on?
Correct.
Okay.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Next is our IT department. And we have 2 FTEs that we're recommending. The first is a public safety technology manager. This position will oversee the various individuals responsible for hardware and software and radios necessary to support both fire and police. If you haven't looked inside a police vehicle or fire apparatus lately, there's a lot going on in there. And so through conversations with both the police and fire department, user feedback and surveys we've done internally, there was a clear desire to improve the service specifically to public safety. We also are recommending a network engineer. This position will handle the design, testing, implementation, maintenance, and documentation of the city's network and management tools. As we grow, so does the maintenance of our network infrastructure. The city currently does not have a dedicated position for a network engineer. Any questions related to IT?
Councilmember Stip?
No, sir.
Councilmember Kano?
The Public Safety Technology Manager, that position will report to IT?
Yes.
Okay, and it's a manager, so will it have positions reporting to it, or is it just having oversight for the function?
It has positions reporting up to it. I believe there are 4 to 5 FTEs that will roll up underneath that public safety
Existing
manager.
employees?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Bray?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councilmember Campbell.
On page 75 of the budget, the mass notification communication system that was not funded, is this the reverse 911 phone that we're talking about? We've only used that once that I know of since I've lived in the city. We've done a reverse call. So it seems to me that this would be important for our residents to have it.
Councilmember Campbell, that is a mass notification tool. It could be viewed similar to the reverse 911 if there's, it's a method of outward communication from the city from a public safety perspective, a mass casualty event,
Right.
something in effort to communicate outward, but also could be used for general communication, non-public safety related items to, again, an effort to communicate out to the citizens about events going on or, as mentioned, public safety areas to avoid, et cetera.
Do we know why it wasn't funded?
That I cannot
Yeah, I
speak to,
shouldn't
but
ask
Ryan.
you.
Yeah, I can say the basic is of it is, I think you made the comment that you think you may have heard 911 used one time. It's just the infrequency of use, the different methodologies that are with like employee-based ones where we can reach them through cell phones and different technologies and so on.
I know we used it whenever we had a big transformer outage up in Estrella, and we had to start taking ice up to the folks because we couldn't get, we needed to let them know what had
Correct.
happened. So I'm
think
just
the idea
worried
was-
that we've got to be able to have some way to notify our residents if we were to have a mass notification that was important, whether it be a road closure all up in Estrella or Palo Verde or what. So
And
I
one,
just want to make sure we have something in our back pocket that we know we'll be able to get a hold of our residents or put it out. And we can't say we're going to put it out on Facebook and think everybody's going to see it.
correct, and this does not replace the reverse 911 call system, so that is still available
The
to
reverse
us to
call.
use. Yes,
Okay,
So
it's
this
still
is-
available and it's free.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, makes you turn back around to come up here. If we have that, do we have any other systems? I mean, 911 goes to, how does that work? Does it, if I don't have a home phone, does it go to my cell phone that's registered? How does that work for citizens that don't have landlines?
Actually, that's a good question, which, to be quite honest, I cannot answer.
Oh.
I'm a,
Or do we have a text system? I was just, I don't know if that's, the budget was, but that just brought up a question. If, how does it reverse 911 if I don't have a landline?
Good evening, Mayor and Councilmember Loretano. So the reverse 911 does work if the phone is registered, and people can register their mobile phones to have the messages go out to them. We do use it, however, maybe not the entire city gets it. So an example is if there's a missing child or something, we can cordon a whole area and send out a message right away. But unless you live in that area, you wouldn't know that it's being used. So it is available.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. I just thought about that with the cell phone. So thank you.
Yeah.
We're good?
I'm good.
We're good? All right, go ahead.
Next is digital communications with one FTE ask for a video production specialist. Pretty self-explanatory, allow for more videos, more content. We don't currently have a video production specialist on our staff. Despite that, our staff does, I think, a very good job of producing the content that they have. I actually have a budget analyst who's getting ready to start with us next week, who part of the reason she first got interested in Goodyear was she saw our social media online, saw the culture, so we can use our videos to actually promote as a staffing tool as well.
Councilmember Stip?
No, sir, next one.
Anybody else? The only comment I'd like to make is I'm very appreciative of our communication staff. I think they do a very good job, and any help we can give them to get out there, help branding the city and getting information out. Because I'm always getting positive feedback from the various stories and how they actually get the message out there. So again, kudos to the staff. I really appreciate that, and in full support of this FTE. Go on.
On to fire. The first bullet point relates to 8 FTEs, and that is Fire Station 187 to fully staff. We currently are staffed with a 2-person crew of 1 captain and a firefighter operating out of a Type 6 brush truck. To bring the fire station up to standards, the staffing plan will require hiring 5 FTEs that are firefighters and 3 engineers. These are the positions that are currently funded out of the SAFER grant, and we have the dollars that in case that grant does not go through, we will still be able to move forward with this request.
Councilmember Stip?
Since I can't see the slides, is there more to the fire request than just these personnel? Because I think there's a whole bunch more.
There is more, yes. We can continue on, and I'll continue until we get through the end of them, and then we can go for questions. So thank you.
When you get to the end, then I can fire my questions. Thanks.
Okay. The second request has to do with responding battalion captain. This is 2 FTEs, so 1 captain position and 1 battalion chief, and this is related to Fire Station 181. We have an accreditation and compliance coordinator position. You will see a similar request for PD here in a few minutes. This was out of a 2021 council discussion, the request to pursue a program cost related to the Center of Public Safety of Excellence, which includes this position. And then last but not least, we are requesting a preventative cancer screening for sworn personnel. Anyone sworn over the age of 40 will be eligible. Staff will be offered a cafeteria-style plan where they may select to have some or all of the cancer screenings performed that we have available. The department currently has 65 employees over the age of 40, and we would schedule 1/3 of the employees to participate each year on a continuing rotation basis. Now, are there any questions related to fire?
There we go. Councilmember Stip?
Okay. Yes. So I'm trying to get my notes together because this is exceptionally hard to follow without slides. So the question really is more of a statement about hire the 2nd responding battalion and 1 captain. All of the supplemental information, all of the justifications talk about managing the personnel and, responding on the calls and all the rest of that. Good justification. Why are we only funding this for 40 hours? Do these people not need supervision the other time during the week? This seems to be one of those scenarios that we need to either go all the way or go none of the way. Having a 40-hour battalion chief trying to supervise employees that are working 48.96 just doesn't seem to make any sense to me whatsoever. That's their whole purpose in life, is to be there. And if the whole reason that we're putting them in place is because we have a span of control issue, then we have a span of control issue 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I really think we need to be looking at this and funding this position completely, which means 3 battalion chiefs, 3 captains. We're already spending a couple of $1 million on facilities and apparatus, et cetera. We should go all the way, or we need to wait until we can do it and do it right. I think this is a mistake going forward with only a single 40-hour person. It defeats the entire purpose. And quite frankly, if you look at the justification, it's there. So why are we not funding it all the way? I think this needs to be a change that we take going forward before we adopt the final budget. The other questions that I have on fire are related to the supplementals, and I think some of the supplementals are encapsulated as CIP projects. So if that's the case, are we talking about that later, Ryan? Is that what I'm gathering?
Yes. Any supplementals that have to do with CIP projects would be talked about. Now, is there anything specific that you're looking for, Councilmember Stip, that you want to discuss?
No, I just, my questions were on the fire side, since since we have the time delay, are really related to the replacement apparatus, the additional brush truck, and the additional backup vehicle. So we've got 3 vehicles in the CIP, one of which appears to be a replacement, which I'm assuming is a replacement for the vehicle that currently operates out of Station 187. In the following year, 24, it appears as though we're spending another $800,000 on a brush truck, and then later on, under a different area, there's a backup brush truck, which is only $250,000. So I'd like to get some clarity on the disparity between those, and if I'm understanding the order of progression on those. And that ends my questions on fire.
So if we could, we have the fire chief up here that can respond to the responding battalion chief. And then after we finish our supplementals, we'll get into the CIP items. And then we will have Councilmember Stip's question on the CIP portion, and we'll address it at the CIP portion of tonight's discussion.
Okay, go ahead. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paul Louisi, Interim Deputy City Manager and also Fire Chief in my part-time. So to address the battalion chief question that Councilmember Stip had, we took that into consideration as we presented our argument to the city manager's office. We certainly recognize we're one of 14 departments in the city, and those budget dollars are very precious, and being able to try to spread those across all of those departments. So we did present the combined cost for a full battalion chief build-out. That would be a battalion chief and a captain for each shift, so that they would be able to operate. But we also understood there were other options that we wanted to present to make sure that everybody understood that we could also do this if we wanted to in a phased-in approach. And so what was understood between us and the city manager's office was the best approach may be a phased-in approach over the next 3 fiscal years. So we add a battalion chief and a captain each fiscal year until we build it out into year 3. We've done that in other programs that are expensive for the city, more specifically our SCBA models. We built that out over 3 years. So, we understood what the impact is to the budget, but also to the budget citywide. So that was our approach to offer the phased-in approach.
Councilmember Stip.
Yeah, if I may. And if you could only see my face, I have to applaud the chief. That was great carrying the water for the manager's office. I appreciate that. I would honestly expect no less of an answer than that one. However, since this is the manager's budget, and we have the council with $8 million left over, I think we should probably think of doing this right once instead of dragging this out over 3 years and bringing this forward. And Chief, I appreciate the attempted analogy. We've done it with SCBA replacement bottles. This is personnel and this is shift management. And I think you know as well as I do that these things happen in groups of 3. We don't add a fire station with just a third of the people. We add it with all of the people. This is not any different. And I'm sorry that I'm fighting for this very strongly, but during our pre-meeting, just for everyone else's benefit, we had a 40-hour battalion chief position back in the late 2000s, and I couldn't figure out where it went. And when I asked the question during our little mini brief, it was pointed out that position was me when I was retired, and they eliminated the position. But regardless of that, I am exceptionally passionate about, we're either going to, why not do it right? We've got the capacity. Let's just do it. And let's not kind of screw around with this. We don't do it with the police department. We don't add half a squad. We don't add half the supervision to the police department. We shouldn't be doing it to the fire department. And I would argue that for any position pretty much in this budget. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
With that, I think I'm going to go around with the council, see what their thoughts are. Councilmember Bray?
So, Chief, what's the difference then if you, cost-wise? If we just fold it all up into one, what are we talking about?
I don't know if you want the fire chief to ask, answer money numbers, but basically we were looking at about 1.4 versus about 580, roughly.
1.4 million versus 580.
Roughly.
Okay. And that just gets us up to speed right away.
It's a push all in, yeah.
Okay. Secondly, the 187, I understand that we are offsetting that with a grant that we don't know if we have yet.
Correct. So we did submit for the SAFER grant, which is a federal grant under the FEMA programs. And so they don't start releasing information until probably mid-May, and it could go until probably August until we hear about the final determination on those grants.
And those are one-time annual grants?
So they're for 36 months, 3 years. Yeah, and so 100% of the money comes from the Fed, so they cover their salary and some of their benefits for the 3 years. And at the end of the 3 years, then we essentially own the employee at that point.
My apologies, I kind of went off the question, but I agree with Councilmember Stip. I think especially in this realm, when you're talking about safety and safety for our citizens and a growing community, you just go all in and you get it done. And when we're not, it's not going to put us in an unbalanced budget. I don't see why you would mess around with 3 years and just get it done.
Councilmember Kano? Kano?
We're staffing Station 187 to make it right. We've got currently 2 staff with 1 piece of equipment. We know that our staff have been vulnerable out there. And so we've made the decision to go ahead and staff it appropriately and properly, which is a big investment to be sure, but it's the right thing to do. And I believe then after hearing Councilmember Stip, I think we should apply that same standard to the staffing of what you need. Let's just do it right.
Councilmember Loretano?
I have a question for the fire chief. If you were to staff it and do the phase in, would you have to backfill with like overtime? Or, there'd still be some cost because somebody has to be supervised, right? You still need someone to do those jobs.
Yeah, so the idea would be to start it off as a 40-hour battalion chief and then eventually phase it in. But yes, the concept would be to continually staff that vehicle to make sure that it does provide for that supervision over time. And then at eventual build out, it would be just like our Battalion 181. It would be fully staffed. So if somebody's out sick or injured or on vacation, then we would backstaff that.
So if you went with the way with just the 40-hour, then you're still going to have to pay a little bit extra for overtime, time and a half, right? If
So I-
I'm getting this right, so someone, because if you're only doing it for this portion of time and. it
Oh,
needs to be
yeah, so
covered-
the balance of the time, no, that we wouldn't cover the balance of the time with overtime. So it would just be for the 40 hours that we would staff that vehicle. So once we hit hour 41, the vehicle will be down, and then Battalion 181 would continue to provide that coverage.
So someone still, I mean, you're gonna have to pay somebody anyway extra, so I kind of agree with what we're saying of, let's go ahead and staff it, get it done, and then we can move on to the next one, so it doesn't like kind of poke its head up later on that it needs to get done, just, if we've got something, let's get it staffed.
Okay.
I don't think we're gonna save in the long run that much, and you wouldn't want to be then trying to play kind of whack-a-mole, put this person here to try to get them all where they need to go. So I'm okay with that. I think we've got the money now, so I'm okay.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I just had a question for Doug. So this would be about $1 million more ongoing, correct? Because it's all people we're hiring.
Correct, yeah, it would be about 3 times more than the cost what
Yeah.
you see on here, correct.
And then what does that take away anything? I know we have 8 million extra, but is that already earmarked somewhere else?
No, with the 8 million, what we have planned for the $8 million is for use in the next 5 years of the CIP within our 5-year forecast. So it would just lower that dollar amount that we would have available in our CIP. We have the availability at the end of that 5-year period to be able to absorb something like that. So it would increase our operational cost. We've got the ongoing ability to afford to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with it, especially if there's a need. I'd rather have our people safer than not as well and be covered the entire time. And then the other question is, this is off of that particular thing, but the other supplemental. I'm sure there's some science behind this, but the 40 years old for the cancer screenings, is there science behind the 40, or would 30 be just as good? Or I'm sure there's 30-year-olds get cancer as well. So I'm just curious if going down to 30, it'd be a better thing to do.
Yeah, we certainly would add more personnel if we went down to the age of 30. So it becomes much more costly, certainly. The other piece is that was what the recommendation was from the physician group that we've been consulting with all along as we started to build this idea of this concept of the screenings. It is what other cities are doing. So we kind of took that as a practice from them. We certainly recognize not everybody's over the age of 40 is going to partake in this, but a lot of the 1583, which is the NFPA standard on firefighter health and fitness, really calls in the age 40. So, for instance, in the normal public, colonoscopies are recommended for people age 50 and older. For firefighters, it's age 40 and older. So there is a science that is to that, and so we were following along not only with the NFPA standards, but also with our recommendation from our physicians.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we do catch it as soon as early as possible.
So for all of our other employees, they still get their annual physicals, which are pretty invasive. So there's still other opportunities for things to be caught.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell?
Well, since we have $8 million extra, I would like to speak in favor of the residential lockbox, and I'll tell you why. We have a lot of single folks that want lock boxes, and I know if we buy them as a city, we can sell it to them at a cheaper rate, and they're the kind that the fire department has the key, and it's just a safety issue, and I have been asked several times, where did I get mine? I bought just a regular realtor's box, and I have that on my front door so that if something happens to me, y'all can get in, because I don't have anybody to call.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's important that we offer that, especially now you've got 2 large senior communities in this city. And even without that, you have a lot of single folks living alone, and this might be something that they could do. And I would hope that for the low-income families that if we did offer that service, that we would be able to take care of them regardless of their ability to pay.
Yes.
But it's just a safety issue, and I think that's really important. The second thing is that the crisis response team asked for a heart monitor, and it wasn't It was not approved, and I haven't talked to anyone, but I'm assuming that the crisis response team is going out when there's been a catastrophic event in someone's life. After fire leaves, the crisis team is still there. What happens if while they're talking, someone has a heart attack right there? What do we do?
So
Call
we-
911?
Well, as you know, they're connected into the system, so they have radios with them, so they have quick access into the system. We've also deployed a medical bag with the paramedic as well as an AED, so they do have
They do
some
have that, so
tools
they don't need
to get
this
things
tool.
started. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then on another note, this is really not even a thing to do with the budget, but for the last 3 nights, we've had a fire truck across the street from my house, and I just want to tell you how appreciative the neighborhood is of the service that y'all have given to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. I think a lot of it's already been covered, and I think Councilmember Stips makes some very, very good points. The SAFER grant, if that doesn't happen, do we have enough, well, it's probably for the finance director. Do we have enough general fund money to cover if for some reason that goes south?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And that's my question. And again, what Councilmember Stip was talking about, to me also makes sense to be all in. So, and it seems like you got the majority of the council here. Go ahead, Councilmember Bray.
I just, one last question on the screening part. I don't have any problem with it. Do we have any benefit with our workman's comp or our insurance program that because we're doing this preventative stuff and trying to catch it early, do we save anything on that end?
I can certainly check with HR and our risk partners, but I'm not aware of anything that I know of, but I can check.
Other city is.
Yeah, so there's been several cities that have either gotten grants or just moved forward with this program. That's not the thing that I'm hearing from them, but I can certainly ask. I don't think I've asked that question directly.
I think it would be important to at least have that discussion with the insurance. I mean, we're being proactive, we're spending money, we're trying to keep our folks healthy and, preventative. So it would only make sense that at least have the discussion to see if we can reap some benefits on the back end.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hold on, we got Councilmember Loretano.
Sorry to keep you up here.
No.
I agree with Councilmember Campbell. I think it was like $10,000
That's
was all
it,
it was.
just
Even if we had to use our
10,000.
council funds, I think that's a really good program. Are they the electronic that you use, like the RFI technology, or is it the old fashioned kind with the key?
It's a lockbox with a key
Okay.
access to it.
Okay,
Yeah, but we'll certainly, if it's approved, we'll certainly go out and find the latest and greatest and make sure that we are getting the best technology that's out there, so.
But I just want to make sure it's easy and it will work and
Yes,
people
of course.
older or have disabilities that we can
Yep.
get into their house. And Wally, you can always call me.
Thank you, Sherry. I will.
Go ahead.
I don't want to belabor it. I don't know what the residential lock program box is. Is it for individual people or is it for the whole neighborhood?
No. It's for individual homes or
Home,
for
just like
for
while I talk about
people.
the
Yeah, so
lock box
It's on
for
our
her
door.
house.
It's hanging on the door.
Councilmember Campbell's point, if
Yeah,
live alone,
she gives
it
someone the
it
code.
gives us access, yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gives you the code, you have it on file, and then you can just walk in.
correct.
So, okay.
And
That
they
made
won't
sense.
My door down,
Yeah. So,
you
that's what it made sense that's what it was. I wasn't familiar, so thank you.
Sure.
Guess we got one more, Councilmember Kano.
How many boxes can you buy for $10,000?
Good question. I haven't looked at that actual supplemental in a little bit of time, so if you give me a few minutes, I can look it up and I get you the answer
And then
before.
lastly, I saw that you listed a fire plans examiner. Are we meeting our current demand that from the new building, new construction and such?
So currently our fire marshal is working very closely with the development services. And there are times where he's called in to assist. Certainly working with Christopher, they're at a point now where they have some really high-level expertise in there. And so they're able to use that expertise to kind of offset what the fire marshal is. We had put it in to be cautious that if we didn't find that expertise that, where we're going to be able to find it from. So certainly right now, we feel like we have that level of expertise.
All right, thank you.
Done? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Next, we have our police department. And there are 17 FTEs broken down into, the first is 2 additional police squads. Those are made up of 2 sergeants.
A learning deal. So we are making the changes to the final budget to reflect the staffing load for the battalion chief and the captain, right?
What we do at the work session is the city manager takes the feedback from the council, and when we come back to tentative, we will have went through everything in there. So it will be the city manager looking at it, bringing it back for a recommended budget. When we get this kind of feedback from council, you can kind of count on that change will be happening. But council itself is not making any changes because it is a work session and no direction is being taken.
Yeah.
Apologies, newbie.
Yeah, no, that's
problem.
okay. And just to add on to that, what'll happen is that's why with the work session, this one was kind of like 7-0. So I think the
I just wanted to make sure that it was-
city manager kind of figures we're all at there. So, okay. All right. Go ahead.
All right, so to police, it is FTE related. Again, 2 patrol squads. We are adding, consisting of 2 sergeants and 8 police officers. This is just another step in transitioning from our 2-district system to our beat system. Telecommunication operators relating to our 911 center. This includes adding a second radio channel for police operations. Investigative assignment police officers, there's 3 of those. This is a little bit of the downstream again, add more patrol. It increases the caseload for our investigations team. Our policy and accreditation manager, which we just mentioned, again, as part of council audit recommendation back from last year. And last but not least, a police personnel study. So we believe we're going in the right direction. We're not expecting to zig and then zag, but we want to make sure that where we're adding within the police department makes the most sense as we continue to grow based on being a unique city and the pace that we're growing at. Are there any questions related to police?
Councilmember Stip?
No, sir, next one.
You see? Vice Mayor?
This is probably a silly logistical question, but the 3 911 operators, that's what we're adding here, right? I know I took a tour of the new one, but I'm more familiar with the old one where there's a lot of space constraints. I'm sure there's enough space for 3 operators in this area. That'd be correct, right? I'm sure you wouldn't ask for this or a space for it, so.
Mayor Pizzillo and Vice Mayor Hampton, we do have enough space to grow at our telecommunications center. And it'll also add an extra channel to our emergency traffic that's out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. As we're growing as a city, there'll be more load. So I was just curious. I took a tour. I remember it being a really great, definitely a lot better, big step up from the previous 911 call area. So I couldn't remember how big it was. And so thank you.
Councilmember Bray?
The police commander position that didn't make the city manager's budget, I guess there's a little bit of a thought process there, and I guess my concern is as we're growing the squads and we're changing, I know, to the beat shift and all of that, what does that mean? I mean, can we live without that and pick it up somewhere else? I'm just concerned, same with how we did the fire department. Do we need to be all in on this type of situation, or are we okay with not having that position?
Mayor Pizzillo and council member, yes, we're okay with not getting it, but it is hopefully part of our future growth. I believe the staffing study will help us also provide that path or that guidance needed for the commander position that would sit between a lieutenant and the deputy chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Campbell? You good?
I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody's okay? Continue. Oh, hold on, you got one?
Yeah, I was just looking we talked about the hiring and recruiting police officer that wasn't added as well. I assume that's going to come, if we're going to be hiring, I'm sure you're going to, after the study, I'm sure that'll come after the study as well. If we're going to be hiring a lot of people, just like I think we added an HR person to help with just the hiring type process as well. So I imagine those will come together in the future, so.
It will. We currently have one background investigator now that is doing our hiring recruiting, and then we also have people that are trained to be able to help us if there's a backlog needed. As you know, this current year, we had 19 and a quarter positions, and we're doing a good job with bringing them on board. Once again, that police personnel study is going to provide a roadmap for us for future years, and we can do without the position now. However, our main goal is to, because we usually take from patrol to go into specialties and things like that, we really need to get our base, our patrol officers that are responding to the calls for service coming in up to speed before we start looking at other things.
Good, very good. All right, go ahead.
Moving on to development services. You'll notice on the operating budget, just so everybody is on the same page, we did have a reorganization where a lot of the dollars were absorbed from the engineering department into development services. So if you see the operating budget year-over-year increase, that's the majority of what that was. For the key supplementals that we're requesting, I kind of want to break this into a couple buckets from the FTE standpoint. The first has to do with our business analyst and principal planner or civil engineer. These are actual FTE positions, but you will notice we're also asking for, at the bottom bullet point, is contract services as well. So there has always been the discussion of making sure we're not over-hiring. We are growing, but we want to find that right balance between contract positions and FTEs. In this situation, our one-time contract dollars are not reducing, and we're still adding the FTEs, which will demonstrates that we do believe that this is a necessary add from the FTE side of things going forward. Based on the results that we're seeing, pretty much every workload metric that we look at, site plan applications, preliminary plat cases, rezoning, pre-app meetings, all those are up substantially year over year, and this will help us meet those needs. The other supplemental that's not FTE related on there has to do with our general plan update. So that is required to be updated every 10 years. This is the upcoming year where it's required to happen. That also includes the cost for elections associated with that. And by necessity, our zoning ordinance will also be updated. And last but not least, our design standards and policies manual, which I believe was last updated in 2017. All of that is encompassed into one supplemental to update all those at one time. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Stip?
Yes, sir. So again, I apologize. Notes are everywhere. The question I had on this is the business analyst. If you read the description, it talks about it basically doing what we've already done, which is the lien process. This is like a lien person that we've already been through. I'm trying to get a handle on this because the backlog that is occurring in development services is not because they don't have good process. It's got to be workload capacity. So I want to hear a little bit more about that. This is the only really position that I really kind of question where we're headed at, especially in an organization that is significantly overwhelmed by the workload, and that's not a reflection on anybody other than the fact that our city is growing. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that, maybe get a little deeper explanation.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Stip, this is Christopher, if you can't see me on your screen. Thank you for the question. The business analyst position does have a primary focus of helping us to continue to advance continuous improvement, which is lean, throughout development services, which includes civil review, building safety, the inspection process, code compliance, as well as planning and zoning. We are not done with lean. We have been on this journey and continuous improvement. We've been on this journey for 7 years. It is not done. As a matter of fact, just as an aside, we are actually doing an improvement project this week. So our staff continually comes up with new ideas on ways that we can improve our processes to be more efficient, have happier, more satisfied employees, and happier and more satisfied customers. So this is a complete journey that we are on, and the integration of development services and the former engineering components, civil reviews, civil inspections, and the front counter gives us a great opportunity to make sure that we're aligned top to bottom and side to side. So this is a great opportunity for us to continue with the gas pedal and be on the gas pedal and on the forefront of improvement. We have all kinds of metrics on time that we have saved over the last 7 years, as well as processes and things of that nature that have been improved. And frankly, we're just getting started because there is plenty to do. So hopefully that answers your question.
And if I could add, Mayor, so Councilmember Stip, this is Julie. So currently, the lien process in development services has been dependent upon the resources out of human resources. So Tim is the primary driver assisting the department, which has meant I have a capacity issue where if other departments are wanting to pursue the lean program, Tim's time, to keep up with what's been going on in development continuum has become an issue. So by hiring someone that can focus, among some other duties as a business analyst in development continuum, it allows Tim to return to the more generalist role so we can include new departments in the program.
Thank you. Councilmember Stip?
So does this, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how big the delay is on your end. Does this mean we should start to expect to see business analysts in many of the departments going forward in the future?
Manager, you want to?
Yeah, thank you.
The question's not rhetorical.
I'm sorry. I would need to look at how, business analyst does exist in other departments. I believe we added one in finance last year. There's certainly, I'd need to look if there's any others. I don't know if Human Resources has access to that information right now. I could certainly do a follow-up on how many business analysts we have in the city.
And I could say,
All right, that ends my questions. Thank you for taking time.
and for this type of business analyst where it does have a big lean focus piece to it, the one in finance specifically, and then this one in development service would be the first two that are really geared towards lean. You will see a lot of the kind of stuff that's going on in our IT department as well, where they're looking at implementing new software and new technology solutions. You have to make sure you have those good processes. So there's elements to it on the IT side as well, but these are the two that are in departments that are like this.
Thank you. Councilmember Bray?
Being on planning and zoning for so long, I know they've worked really hard on lean and got to see some of those processes over my time frame. And I got to give kudos to that staff. They've done a really good job of actually implementing lean and getting it right. I would agree with Christopher that there is still a lot to do, especially with absorbing all of that new task with permits and so on and so forth. So I would support this. The caveat I would put on it, and one of the things with lean, and I'm sure you all know this, but we do a really good job of looking internally, right, how to fix things. Especially in your department, I think it would behoove us to talk with the business community and start that dialogue with our business analysts to make sure that while we think we're meeting the needs inside and we have to do that, are we meeting the needs of our customer? And they're not going through some redundancy because we think it works better for us.
Thank you. Councilmember Loretano?
Thank you very much. My question is just basically on I appreciate that you're trying to balance the contract services and the new employees, but we see all the growth here. Are you finding that you can find contract people? Is it easier to find contract people? Is it harder, or does it just depend on the day of the week? Retention, how's that working?
That's a great question. Mayor, Councilperson Loretano, thank you for that. The staffing shortage in the development industry, let's just call it that, is real and it's profound. On the contract side, we are having troubles filling contractor positions. Essentially, what we have is when we go out to our partner firms, we try and actually lock up, if you will, a person that can be dedicated to our needs so they can understand our processes, our requirements. That way we don't have to retrain a new contract person every other week if they change them out, so to speak. And so that's been a competitive advantage from our standpoint because we're able to work with our contract provider and say, hey, we're willing to almost guarantee you the utilization of staff person or staff person, 2 people or 3 people, whatever it may be, for a year. And then they get a lot of comfort from that. So that's been our competitive advantage in securing contract help, but it has been a problem and is continuing to be a problem, just finding people in the development industry.
Okay, gotcha. So it's not better if you hire a person or if it's the same problem with contracts?
Yes. For example, in the civil side, civil review side, we've had some open positions in the civil department for a long time. Building safety inspectors, send them to us. If you know anybody in the inspection world, send them to us because we have like half of our building safety staff is roughly half is contract because it's just so hard. And we have those council authorized positions. We just have not been successful in the recruitment.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You good? Vice Mayor?
No, I think it's good. I mean, with us growing so rapidly, I'm sure you're overwhelmed. So, yeah, I think the lean is a great thing to continue to do. And to Bray's point as well, just looking across all departments. I mean, the in and out of your department as well, and all the stakeholders in place. So, I think that's great as well. Yeah, just keep us updated. I know there's a lot of positions on here that you requested that you didn't get. So, yeah, just keep bringing them up. So, thank you.
Councilmember Campbell?
Well, Christopher, before you came on staff, I know long ago we used to do a lot of contract services because we did not have the staff and we were building so quickly. And then unfortunately, we were overwhelmed with so many plans that even the contractual folks couldn't keep up with demand. And I understand you are having trouble finding contract people now, and I just hope that we'll be able to keep the plans moving as quickly as possible because we don't want to, and I know you don't either, and I know our staff doesn't want either, to go back to like we were years ago when we really had log jams.
Right.
And everybody seems to want their plans tomorrow. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You all good? Go ahead.
Economic development, 1 supplemental request for an economic development specialist. This position manages the overall research program, will implement and manage our CRM system, lead workforce development efforts, and increase department capacity to support inquiries. Any questions related to this supplemental?
Councilmember Stip?
Nothing to add here.
That's it?
So I just have a question. Does
Go
the
ahead.
economic development really feel like they've got enough people on staff? Because to me, we don't have enough people out there beating the bushes to bring more business in here. We've got 11. I don't know what all 11 do, but
She's coming up.
yeah. I'm just not real sure.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. Councilmember Campbell, thank you for the question. We have added 2 new project managers in last fiscal year's budget, and that those positions, as you heard from Christopher Baker, are always hard to fill, but we were able to fill them very successfully. And so we had 2 new project managers start in January. And so they're getting up and running right now. So at this particular point, I feel that we are well-staffed in the department, with the exception of this particular request.
So we have 8 on staff and we're bringing just 1 more to get for a total of 9?
We currently have 10 on staff. That includes everybody.
Sorry.
Not necessarily project managers, but we do have 5 project managers. So we are well-staffed at this point in time with project managers.
Okay, thank you.
Everything okay? The only comment I'd like to make is, with the additional staff, hopefully we're working some corporate offices as far as bringing more amenities, restaurants, entertainment, retail, to try to get them to see that we're a thriving community here and we're being underserved, because if you're successful, or if you have a good product, they do very well here. So hopefully with the additional resources, we'll do a little more focus on that.
Thank you, Mayor, we will.
Oh, wait a minute, hold on, one more question here.
So no, I appreciate the extra person that you're getting. I'm surprised there was no other requests though. Is there, I'd see any other, even in their suggestions or anything denied or anything like that? I only saw the one request is what you had, right? There wasn't anything else that you requested at all, right?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, for the question. That is correct. With some of the new team members that have come on board with my department, and they're still relatively new, prior to requesting anything else, we wanted to get them up and running to Council Member Campbell's point, to make sure that we're well-staffed and we're a well-oiled team. And I believe right now, at this point in time, we have the resources we need. However, next fiscal year, we'll take a look again at this time and share any of additional requests with the council.
Good. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Moving on to engineering. There are 2 FDE requests and an additional supplemental related to our microtransit program, Phase 1. The 2 FDE requests, the first is a senior project manager. This is specifically for transportation, to have a specialist in that area with so many projects and so many dollars being spent in that area. That's what that particular position is meant to fill. And then we also have a pavement management inspector, which will be funded out of our HERF fund. And this position will allow us to, in a nutshell, try to be more proactive with our pavement management. So manage current projects, assess existing condition of pavement in the city, and assist with final acceptance of warranty walks with the city and turnover, pretty much anything pavement related. This person will be the go-to going forward. And then last but not least, our microtransit program. This is year 1 of a five phase over a 4-year period. And then part of this is federally funded. The total ask is for $1 million. 500,000 of that is federally funded. The other half we're covering ourselves. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Stip?
You know, this is going to be my my speech as the mayor talks about funding water projects with general obligation bonds. And I'm not sure who's in the room, but hopefully both Samit and Hugh are in there. We're adding a pavement management inspector, which seems to be, you know, we have a pavement management supervisor, so we have a supervisor over one person. That's an org chart issue, but my real issue is, once again, we cannot have added the number of road miles that we have to maintain the condition of the city that we have created the expectation for with the number of street sweepers that we have. I swear I will lose my mind within the next 2 years if there is not a street sweeper person and vehicle added to this budget sometime in the next 2 years while I have two more whacks with this mole. Please, I'm begging somebody, we have to look at this program. I want to ask for measurables. How do we know what value is this person going to add? I mean, there's a lot of metrics we want to go through there to bring that forward. However, we can absolutely talk about the quality of the maintenance of our city and the way that we maintain this community with that street sweeping program, and I'm not letting it go for 2 more years. So somebody satisfy this thing before I make you all nuts. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Any other questions? Councilmember Bray?
I'll let you ask that question. Okay. For Councilmember Loretano, she wants to know how much a street sweeper would cost.
A
Just
new
out
one.
of curiosity.
Yeah, a new one.
A new one.
Councilmember Bray and Councilmember Loretano, I believe the number is, I haven't seen current numbers, but I believe it's just under 300,000 is currently what we're looking at.
And the ones we're running are what, like 10 years old?
Current ones we have were all purchased, are all model year 2016. And I believe in the vehicle replace plan, I'm not trying to speak for fleet and public works, but I believe there were 2 or 3 in the upcoming vehicle replacement plan for fiscal 23.
Okay.
Hold on, here comes Semi.
Okay, you guys know I'm not talking about just the truck. I'm talking about the person that operated too, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, we're talking about it.
Yeah, Thomas.
And Mayor and Council, if I may just add a little bit, and this is Subit Mohan, the Engineering Director, that the cost of the sweeping equipment itself would be close to 300,000, but we normally rely on the funding from the congestion management for air quality funds. So we usually plan to spend maybe 5.5–6% of that, so about say less than $20,000. But then there are certain criteria which we have to qualify under. We cannot just put in a request without meeting all of MAG's criteria, which we evaluate annually, which we will do so in June or so this year.
So what does that mean?
There's rules for street sweepers that are very specific to the environment, it sounds like.
Yes,
Okay.
to meet the EPA standards.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does control it.
Anybody else?
Actually, I let Mr. Stip
Yeah, I got
off
something.
on that. I had a question on the project management. I see that it was requested the 500,000 and we went down to 300,000. I guess my question is, this is looking over a 5-year CIP, but I mean, in all reality, I think we have to put pedal to the metal on getting these streets up to standards where we can move people and product. And I don't know that while a 5-year outlook is nice, I would like to see how we can get that down to 3 years. I mean, do we have enough there to do that? Because I think that's our biggest challenge over the next few years.
Mayor and Council, that's a really good concern. And at any time, we look at 5 years, but fund 1 year at a time. So right now, we are in the middle of just getting ready for our Transportation Master Plan update, which is scheduled in FY23. So we are just right now aligning with the general plan update so that we can have, you all saw the Transportation Priorities Plan that we presented to you, in which we presented the 16 new transportation projects for FY23. So right now it's also a capacity issue for us, and that's the reason we requested an additional senior project manager who would focus on the transportation projects in our CIP. So we think that between the capacity that we have and the ambitions that we have, this is a good balance at this time. And more will become clear to us as the Transportation Master Plan update goes through in the coming years.
I guess then to Julie, was the 500,000 just overpriced in your opinion, and the 300,000 meets the need there?
Yeah, the 300,000, it falls more in line with what we've seen historically, and actually being able to get the project manager, contract staff on board. If we run into situations where we need to increase that money, we've got the flexibility and ability to do that once we actually see it going. So it's part expectation management, part what we've actually experienced, and the ability to increase it if need be.
Okay. That's it, yep.
All right, Councilmember Stip's got a follow-up.
Thanks. I seriously appreciate the entertaining this line of questioning. But back to the street sweeping program, we don't have to wait for MAG to approve it. We can add one without it. We just have to pay for it ourselves. Is that not correct?
That is correct, Mayor and Council. We could. Right now, we are in the process of evaluating our street sweeping frequencies with our valley benchmark cities, and we have not finished that comparison yet. But for example, we are pretty much at par with what City of Mesa does, but we are way ahead of what City of Phoenix does. We are at least 3 times better and more frequent than the City of Phoenix. In our case, we follow our street sweepers after the bulk trash removal in the residential areas, and we do that almost on a monthly basis. Say the City of Phoenix does it every quarter. So we are yet to complete the analysis, but we have taken it upon ourselves on this task so that we will compare where we stand compared to our benchmark cities.
Anything else, Councilman?
Mayor, if I might.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So we have been the leader in this program since I came to the city in 2001, and I know we were leading it long before that. Our frequency of trips used to be more than once a month, and we used to do a really good job. As time has gone on, we have not increased the number of machines and operators. We have absolutely increased the number of road miles. And all we've done is we've continued to extend that period of time out. So if it used to be every 2.5 or 3 weeks, now it's every month, and pretty soon it's going to start to stretch a little bit longer. And we will absolutely see the effects of that. And quite frankly, this is one of those cases where I don't care what the rest of the valley looks like. This is one of the very reasons that people say, you know what, I'll put up with a lot of the stuff that goes on because this city is absolutely clean and pristine. You look at our medians, you look at everything else that we do as a community, and that is why people put up with us. And this is just another leg of that. And as soon as we start letting this slip, everything else starts to slide behind it. That's why this has just been an issue for me. So, quite frankly, I don't care what the benchmarks are. I can only tell you what the benchmark is in my neighborhood, and it's getting worse. And I don't know how many more pictures I need to send to the manager's office of showing what happens when a street sweeper, quote unquote, comes by. It is something we have got to address regardless of what these benchmarks are. Otherwise, this is the beginning of the slide of us not taking care of the things that we are, and yet we're gonna make sure we do the other things higher than every other standard. So my soapbox has collapsed. I'm done. Thank you for entertaining me.
Thank you, Councilmember Stip. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I had a question back to the contract project managers. So I understand, so I know 300,000 you said was appropriate for now, but would more money help us move projects along faster if we had more money to put towards this? Or is it more of a bottleneck in supply and people to do the work? Doesn't matter who's oversighting it. Because I'd like to see, to Councilmember Bray's point, and we put more highlight on road construction and things like that. Would more money, with $200,000 or anything else, move them quicker along?
Mayor and Council Member, Vice Mayor Hampton, that's a good point that you're bringing up. Again, it's a market availability issue that Christopher initially mentioned too as well, that even though our ambition was to initially think that maybe we can spend 500,000, but in the past, like Doug mentioned, we have been able to spend 300,000 or so, which is again because of just the availability of contract project managers in the market. We want them, but they are not available. Even for our full-time positions, we are struggling in filling the position.
Okay.
So
if I come do it part-time, can I do an extra road in the cities?
we are looking for all the help we can find.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm passionate about we need to keep pace with the growth, and the roads are one of the biggest parts of that growth and quality of life. And everything else that we're talking about, street sweepers and everything with our growth. So if there is opportunities to retain more project managers and there's more money needed, and that would move it a timetable up 6 months or initiate a project and get it rolling, I'm definitely for that, especially now. And I know the master plan will speak to a lot of this, but I feel like we need to be more proactive because we're the 9th fastest growing city. So sometimes the planning, master plans can be outdated after they're already created. So, all right, thank you.
We appreciate the support. Yeah.
Councilmember Kano?
Well, if you're not able to get all the people you want, would technology help expedite things? I notice you've got the CIP program workflow and project docs that didn't make the supplemental cut, but it's an investment of $50,000 that sounds like it would be beneficial. So do you have sufficient technology that you need to expedite the plan review and the work that needs to be done?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Kano. And so Mayor and Council, to that point, it's basically an act of balance between finding sufficient balance, again, I suppose, between the time that the plan review staff may have available to be able to review the CIP projects. So we were floating the idea to consider the CIP projects like we do for many ECDEV projects and many high-profile private development projects where we create just a channel for flow cell, we use the term, to be able to get those projects reviewed on a priority basis. And that is something that we were looking at our project docs add-on, which even though it did not quite make the list this time, but we will be exploring that concept on the site so that the plan reviewers are able to look at the 30%, 60%, 90% plans so that when the CIP project plans come for final review, they are in a shape where most of the major issues have already been covered. So even though right now we are still experimenting and learning more about project docs as we are putting more implementations, more modules in place, we would still be able to have our CIP projects being considered for review by development services.
Okay, so you'll be continuing to research this product and then maybe can make an evaluation later on or a better recommendation with more
That is
confidence.
our hope as we learn more about the system and see how our special requests fit in the future.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Campbell?
Okay, so for information purposes, the 2022 street sweeping of Phoenix, they say that major and collector streets within the city boundaries are swept every 14 days, and streets within the downtown business corridor are swept 2 times a week. Correct. And we have so much building around Goodyear, and we have so much dirt flying with the wind blowing and everything. And I understand where Councilmember Stip is coming from, and I really agree with him that we need to do a better job of street sweeping. Where I live, we hire our own street sweeper, but we have it once a week, or else we're yelling about it because there's so much dirt and debris that comes in off of the white tanks. So perhaps we can really take a hard look at that and see how we can better utilize this program and get it out there, because as he says, we care what our neighbors are doing, but we want to do it better because it's our city. We need to take care of it.
Mayor and Council.
Hate to see the dirt.
That's a really good point, and that is something that we can consider and bring a program to you for your consideration. And we can decide how much frequency of cleaning we want, and then along with that, we'll also propose what resources then we would need in equipment and personnel.
Okay, yeah, we need to design the program just for Goodyear. That's what we're interested in. So thank you, Sumit.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple things, and to Councilmember Stips. Yeah, me and my general obligation bonds on water don't quite compare to the passion that you have there on your street sweepers. But with that being said, we pride ourselves on pristineness of the city. And what I mean by that, it's the right-of-ways, it's the weed controls, I mean, we do a very good job. And, when I have visitors even come out here, they think our city's brand new because how pristine we like to keep it. And keeping streets clean and the dust down is just as pristine. So maybe it's something we need to take a look at, if we're going to hold ourselves out as being a very pristine and very nice-looking city as far as cleanliness is concerned. Streets come in there as well. So take a look at it and see what we've got on there. Maybe something we might want to visit to see if there's something we can do to enhance the pristineness of the city with that. Okay? With that, we good?
With that, Mr. Mayor, could we go one step further and just ask that as we move forward with the budget, maybe just present us an option of what it looks like? One, I would like to put in there, how do we accelerate getting the streets built? If there's a possibility there with spending money that we can get more streets built than what we have on the books now to make transportation easier. And then two, add that street sweeper.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think we're going to see that on the CIP. You're talking about scallop streets, getting those things
All of
fixed?
those,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, and I'm with you there, Councilmember Bray. I know I hear that all the time out there, and I'm sure you're hearing it too, and the others are hearing it as far as transportation and moving of people throughout the city, how as we're growing, it's getting more challenging. So, good point. Anything else?
So what I will look to do is, because the FTE would be located here to add a street sweeper, and then in a CIP would be where the equipment would come into play.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we good? Go ahead.
Next on the list is our Parks and Rec Department. We have 9.57 FTEs. I'm going to speak to those kind of in general. A lot of those have to do with the success of our rec center, adding additional programming, not only for after school and summer camps, but also for adult activities and sports that we offer at the rec center. We have a park worker position that's also because of the high usage of our fields and our ballparks to help keep those maintained. I do want to note, if you're looking at your slideshow in front of you versus what's on the screen, there's a slight discrepancy. This is one that we found. So the Parks Worker 2 position should be 1 FTE. It's switched between lines. There should be 1 FTE. Your presentation in front of you is correct. We just didn't have time to update the one that you're seeing on the screen. But the one that you print out is printed out in front of you, and your budget book is correct as far as the FTE. So it's the same number in total, just switched between buckets on the presentation. That's up on the screen. That park worker should be a 1 position, and the special events expansion enhancements should be 2. So it's just switched between. And as it relates to the other requests, in addition to the FTEs, with the addition of Civic Square, holiday decorations, we have more space. We want to make it festive throughout the year, so that includes the cost both of installing it and taking it down, so that's self-sufficient going forward, as well as extension of our library hours. So those are the key supplementals that made sense to highlight. Does anybody have any questions specifically? We can go into detail on anything that you have particular questions on.
Any questions? Councilmember Campbell?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, wait a minute, go back to
You go
Councilmember.
first.
Go ahead, Councilmember Stip.
Thanks. I think this is where this comes out of. So the vacant property maintenance services for $312,000. I am under the impression that the only vacant city properties that we have are the basins. Are there more? And I'm assuming someone's walking out.
Somebody's coming up to answer your question. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Mayor and Council, David Side, Deputy Director, Parks and Recreation. Councilmember Stip, yeah, there are dozens of vacant property parcels that the city owns, and we are obligated to maintain those in compliance with code regulations. So tree, debris removal, trash removal, illegal dumping, all of those things do occur throughout these parcels. So we've kind of hot-shotted it with a number of different resources over the years, but this would allow us to have the dedicated resources to be a little bit more strategic and proactive versus reactive when we are addressing those code compliance issues.
So, David, the follow-up to that is how much of this pertains to the basins?
The basins have a dedicated amount. When we took that over, when we purchased that from the county, there was an annual maintenance budget that was dedicated for the basins, and I believe that was $35,000 per year, which over the years, inflation has eroded that a bit, but the basins have a funding source currently that's dedicated to them. This is in addition for all of the other areas that don't have a dedicated earmarked maintenance fund.
Great. Thank you for answering my question.
Okay, Councilmember Campbell?
Oh, thank you very much. My question, David, don't leave. Thank you. My question is the recreation programming school break camps. Is this just when they're on Easter break and that sort of thing, or is this in the summer? Is this our summer camps?
Yeah, great question, Councilmember Campbell. This is for the various breaks that happen, the fall breaks, the spring breaks, those type of gaps when school is not in session. We still have our 4 sites in the summer that we will be opening up soon for this season, but this particular supplemental is just for those week, per se, breaks in the spring and the fall and so forth.
All right, is this enough money for that? Because that's really important, because the parents don't have any place for those kids to go if the parents are both working full-time.
This is definitely a first step in that process. The schools don't provide that service currently.
No, they don't.
We're kind of at the mercy of availability at the schools, so we want to definitely provide these services wherever we can. We think this is a first step. We'll evaluate its effectiveness, and then we will come back in future budget processes should we need additional resources.
I know my church does a program at Western Sky School on Friday afternoons, and they ask the congregation to donate. And once a month, I donate enough snacks for 250 kids, and it's ongoing. So if we're going to be doing that, I just want to be sure we're funded enough so that you can do it right. You know, because you never know how many kids are going to show up.
Absolutely. We have forecasted the budget supplemental to do a Class A program experience. So we are definitely going to deliver a high quality experience, and then we will evaluate it and come back before council if additional resources are needed.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for doing this. This is really important to the quality of life of our kids and our parents. Thank you.
Councilmember Loretano?
Thank you very much. I agree with Councilmember Campbell. I'm glad it's the first step and not the end step, because I think this is something you're going to find is like the summer program is just like overwhelming, because when you have just like days and holidays here and there, it's nice to have some place to take the kids, because there's so many places that you can't get somebody from care.com. You can't get a permanent type of person because there's not enough time. So I think that's a good start, and I'm glad you're going to evaluate it and see how we can grow it, because I think that'll be very important. And I appreciate the fact that what you stated about keeping all of our areas clean, because I think it goes to the whole issue back to the street sweeper and the medians and keeping the whole city clean. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Councilmember Bray?
I'll just echo what Ms. Loretano said, and keeping those parks there. I mean, they are pristine. They're really good. So let's make sure we keep on top of that. But my question is the aquatics tech, and I know you graciously showed me the pump room there at our facility. That aquatics tech is just going to take care of that one facility, or are we talking about the YMCA facility as well and all that, or just that FTE will solely be the recreation center?
Thank you, Councilmember Ray. This aquatics technician, they will service both the Recreation and Aquatic Center aquatics facility as well as Loma Linda Pool. Those are exclusively operated by the city. The YMCA pool, although the city is a partner in that operation, they're responsible for maintaining that pool. So this position will just be Rec Campus Pool as well as Loma Linda.
So to that, my question is, and that's not my area of expertise. I don't take care of pools, but that seems like not a lot of maintenance or work for a full-time FTE? Have we looked at other possible options there? Or is that enough workload for one person? Two facilities, and when we slow down in the winter, it just doesn't seem like, there's enough work for one individual.
Yeah, and I apologize. I think I overlooked mentioning the splash pad as well. So we have 3 highly valued amenities with high expectations. The Recreation Campus Aquatics Facility, that's a year-round operation. So we offer lap swimming year-round. Obviously, the play pool's more seasonal, but there's a lot of off-season maintenance that goes into the pumps, the sanitation systems. They'll coordinate deck repair, plaster repair. There's a lot to it. They'll spearhead the technical aspect as far as the operations of the pump and the circulation, but they will oversee a lot of the conditions at the pools and make sure that we're balancing the use and the needs as well as timely asset management projects or routine maintenance and those type of things. So we definitely feel that there's a workload that justifies this request.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I appreciate it. My kids used recently the 1 week out of school program at the rec center, so that was great. So I'd like to see an expansion of those, like what you're looking at here, but also more of the summer rec programs too. I think we're in 3 or 4 schools right now. I mean, I'd love to see an expansion of that as a request too. I didn't see that here, but is that something we're going to look for?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Hampton, we're in 4 schools currently. So we have a great relationship with our partners at the Avondale Elementary School District. And we're balancing availability with the demand from the public. A lot of times the schools, they'll wait till the summer season to do their gym replacements, their HVAC repairs, and a lot of those things. So sometimes we're confined by the availability of schools on the sites that we provide and operate, but we definitely look to maximize the offering to the best of our ability.
Yeah, if there is an opportunity that a school becomes available, I'd be in favor of a budget supplemental to help expand that program as well. So, and then the Civic Square landscape maintenance, I know it didn't make it through this budget, but I assume it's still being taken care of. I'm sure there's still maintenance and landscaping going to be done at the new Civic Square.
Correct. That'll be a maintenance task that falls to the Parks Department, and we will make sure that facility is to Class A standards, and we want to make sure that it's ready for all uses and purposes, and it's something for the community to be proud of. I know we have a heavy planning schedule for use and various special events there, so. We're going to use the heck out of it, but we have to have the resources there to take care of it once we use it like we do.
Yeah, I see there's maybe this is also where that aquatic person goes in, the water feature, that'll be there as well. I assume that aquatic tech will take care of that water feature also, I imagine, or is that a landscaping task?
We have some fountains within the system, so Rio Paseo Park, so we're familiar with that a little bit, so we have some expertise in the various work crews that we have. But obviously, if there's an opportunity to leverage another expert to come take a look at it, if we get in a bind or for best practices, we can definitely tap into that resource as well.
Okay. And then, yeah, I'm looking forward to expand the special events coordinator. I think we do a really great job, and I know there's a lot of events that we put on, so I think it's great that we're adding another person there as well. So yeah, I love what you guys do. I just want you to do more of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell? You good?
Oh, I'm good. I love Parks and Rec. They're great.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
I just have one follow-up question on the maintenance of the vacant land. Are we putting that out for bid every year?
So Councilmember Bray, we have a contracted service provider that does that, and we put those opportunities out to the public for response, and we go through our normal procurement process. So it's a competitive process, and we get the best value for the city. But we have historically performed that on a contract basis, And I think this one we will be looking towards, I think engineering has a maintenance contract that we're looking to piggyback off of, but there's definitely opportunities there to, whether it be a cooperative agreement with another city or an existing agreement within the city, it will be contracted service.
And it's looked at annually, or how long is that contract for?
Typically, those will be one-year awards with 4 one-year renewals for a maximum of 5 years. So those are looked at to see if compliance with our requirements and the scope of work is being met. If it's not, there's corrective steps that we can take, or we can put it back out for another competitive process. So it's looked at annually, but it might not be released as an opportunity annually if the vendor is providing quality service.
And I agree with that. I guess on 4 years, I mean, that's a long time to be able to wrap up it's pretty lucrative for somebody to wrap up a 5-year contract like that, and especially in land management like that. I mean, there's people all the time doing that kind of stuff. So is 4 years too long?
To shed a little bit of light on it, if we get notice from our vendor who we're contracted with, let's say costs are escalating, diesel's going up, fuel's going up, and the cost to provide that same level of service is going up 5%, 10%, whatever that is, we work with budget to make sure that we have the resources to absorb that increase, to make sure that we don't have any drop in service delivery. So there's a review of that happens annually through the budget process and every year that the contract is up for renew.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, you get high marks out there. Whenever I'm talking to the people about your rec program, so whatever it takes to keep that high level of service, that's one of the great things we do. So I appreciate all your efforts and the staff. So thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
One additional slide on Parks and Rec, since it seems to be everybody's favorite. We will focus on the ballpark specifically here, and there's only one supplemental. It has to do with our right field entrance signage. So we're constructing a permanent fixture that says enter here, exit here. It alleviates a lot of the congestion from the main concourse area. It was a recommendation from Major League Baseball to implement that, so we're sticking with it and making it more visible for the public.
Councilmember Stip?
No, I got nothing, thanks.
Anybody else? Nope. Go on.
All right, Public Works. We have 2 FTE requests. The first is for a stormwater technician position. This oversees the CCTV that we have and monitors critical stormwater infrastructure. This position was identified as part of our utility rate study presented a few years ago. The other position is a fleet mechanic position. With all the vehicles that we're adding, we need some additional capacity to maintain those vehicles.
All right.
Any
questions?
I
Go
have a
ahead.
question.
Well, Councilmember Bray, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bray.
The only question I have for Public Works is bringing on the additional vehicles that we're going to bring on with police and fire is, do we have enough? Is one additional fleet mechanic enough? Or do we need to be seriously considering more?
I don't believe we've added any fleet mechanics the past year or two. It's gotten to the point where we need to, so they are actively managing their internal staff. We say it's about 1,400 annual hours for a technician to manage those. And based on the units that we've added this year, it kind of tripped that trigger, so to speak. So that's why we're suggesting the ask.
Okay.
Councilmember Campbell?
My question might have been for Parks and Rec, but I thought it was under Public Works. I just want to make sure that somewhere in our budget, we have allocated funds in case we have to clean out the Bullard Wash again if it starts flooding around Falcon Park. Would that be a Park and Rec budget, or would that be a Public Works budget? Who does that? Oh, good. It's a Public Works. Thank you. And I'm just asking, I don't anticipate the flooding problem because I really feel that we've done our due diligence and we have it fixed, but we don't know that until next
I was just
winter.
going to say, I'd like to call Nathan up. No, it's, we do have dollars. The stormwater program is adding dollars for maintenance this year. So anything related to stormwater programs, it's covered by that. So
All right, will you be checking that wash to make
Boiler
sure that we don't
wash.
have blockages before we have a blockage?
And we are watching that wash carefully. We seem to be having some changing conditions. So we're trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah, we're still getting a little water in Pebble Creek, which is kind of crazy right now because it's not raining. We don't know where it's coming from, but we know it's coming from upstream. But we're handling it just fine. But on the other hand, I'm encouraging Pebble Creek to be sure and clean out or check their drains and do whatever they need to do so that we don't have a stoppage.
There's definitely anything related to the maintenance of the stormwater system in the wash. We are budgeted for that.
We have
There is a capital project that you'll see as part of the CIP, and we're having some questions as to do we invest the dollars or not because conditions might have changed, but we're keeping an eye on that.
Okay, good. Thank you so much.
Everybody okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to combine 3 slides here. They are all related to our enterprise funds. We have a slide for water, we have a slide for wastewater, and we have a slide for solid waste. So for the water operating budget, we have $25.5 million, again, self-sustaining. The ask is for 1 FTE, and that is a water distribution customer service tech. More people, more meters, more need to stay on top and continue to ensure that everybody has access to water. If we go to our wastewater fund, we're asking for 2 FTEs for this, and they're sewer line maintenance crews. We performed a study a while back that showed where we had deficiencies or where we needed to work from the wastewater side to fix our assets, and this is the staff that we need to continue to go into and maintain that upkeep for those assets that we currently own. And last but not least, for solid waste, we're requesting an equipment operator. This is just to continue to staff and maintain our bulk crews that we have.
Any questions? Councilmember Stip?
No questions.
Anybody else? You all good? Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. What do you guys all say about a 10, before the CPA, next one's this capital improvement plan? About a 10-minute break?
Oh, that'd be good.
You guys
Thank
ready?
you. Thank you.
All right. Break for about 10 minutes. Ed, you're up.
All right, so now that we've covered supplementals, we will dive into our capital improvement plan for the evening. The first slide here is just meant to give you a little background on our CIP in general. 5-year fully funded deliverable CIP, that's part of our city's policies. Projects that are considered $100,000 or greater fall into the CIP bucket. What we're going to talk about includes all funding sources. The projects are entered using today's cost, so even though they might not be constructed physically until 2026, we are putting in the CIP what it would cost to do that project in today's dollars. And then any unallocated fund balances will be programmed into our CIP reserve. So that allows us some flexibility to expedite projects on that timeline if we feel appropriate. The takeaway here is nothing has changed from last year as far as how we view CIP. The process itself is very similar to our supplementals. It started way back in October, November timeframe. Departments will prepare scopes, schedules, and budgets. That includes existing projects as well as new projects. So it is important to note that we are touching every single CIP project every single year. We're updating costs. Nothing is just saying, well, it was in there last year. We're not looking at it for 2 or 3 years. And then from there, engineering has a look at it, budget team, procurement, everybody reviews. The executive team then gets together, decides which projects make sense to fund. And the key constraint, which is kind of a theme of the night, is our resource capacity. So it might be great that we know we need to install 10 traffic signals next year. Do we actually have the resources internally to do that? Do we have the ability to procure those and get the materials that we need in time? Those are some of the big constraints that we're dealing with. It is important to note that everything in our CIP has the ability to be funded today based on the dollars that we have. There will be discussions at a future point about bonding capacity that we might go out for authorization for. Nothing is in the CIP today that assumes future funding. So looking at what do we mean when we say we have a 5-year fully funded CIP, this is basically our way of proving that out. I've highlighted the CIP line on the chart in front of you. So that those are the dollars from our general fund that we say we have to fund, that we can see we have the dollars available. So at the end of fiscal year 2027, $16 million approximately. That's our CIP reserve that we're saying we can expedite and move dollars around if we need to fund other projects. So what is in our CIP? What dollars are we looking at here? So our CIP, again, is a 5-year look from fiscal year 2023 into 2027, and that is just over $500 million in the current year's CIP. There are 193 projects included in that amount. Just for reference, for fiscal year 2022, our 5-year CIP was $549 million, and that did include carryovers. There are a few more projects at around 216 projects versus the 193 that we have. However, when we do the carryover process as part of our tentative adoption, that will then include the carryover, so that number is likely to increase. Last year we carried over about $150 million. We had some really big projects. We don't expect that carryover number to be nearly as big this year. So this is just a different way to look at that same $502 million on your screen. And this is how we will be chunking up our CIP, so to speak, to allow us the ability to better talk about our different projects in buckets that make sense, that are like funded or have similar qualities. So I'm going to start throwing some numbers out here, so I'll try to slow down. Hopefully you can follow me. But out of our $502 million 5-year CIP budget this year, 336 of the $502 million relates to projects that existed in our 5-year CIP last year. So that means approximately 67% of the dollars in this year's CIP were from projects that existed last year. So only about a third is actually related to new projects. Of those from a project standpoint, again, there's 193 in this year's 5-year CIP. 109 of those existed last year. So we just talked about the dollars. That's from a project standpoint, what existed last year versus this year. So of those 109 projects that existed in last year's CIP that are still here, those projects on average increased in cost about 10.7%. So that falls in line a lot with the inflation numbers we're seeing. It is not a perfect number. It's not straight across the board. Certain projects, depending on the resource intensiveness and the materials used, were higher and lower. We'll actually call out a few of those projects and why that changed, that were more outliers in just a minute. If you look specifically at 2023 projects, or if you look at the chart on the screen, actually, you might wonder why our 2023 numbers actually went down versus last year. Well, there were 3 projects that shifted. One of them shifted, I apologize. 2 of them reduced in scope. So our Camelback Road project reduced in scope to the tune of about $7 million. Our brine disposal project that we had reduced in scope by about $15 million. And then our Rainbow Valley Water Reclamation Facility, we had dollars currently programmed in 2023 last year. They shifted out to 2024, which is why on the chart you see on the screen, there's such a discrepancy in the 24 numbers this year versus last year. If you look at the other years, 25, 26, and 27, or the 5-year as a whole, that kind of falls in line with what makes sense is with the inflation, us looking at every single project. So my goal here is to get everybody comfortable with the existing projects first that we had in there from last year before we tackle the new projects. It is important, I guess, to note out that the process of updating these can be very resource intensive. As projects are in the outer years, the scopes are more broad. As they continue to roll down the timeline into current years to where we are eventually funding them, we will get better scopes, we'll get better cost estimates, so those numbers get dialed in, so to speak. So when our team is updating these numbers internally, to get through 193 projects, it takes a lot of time. So not all of these estimates were updated yesterday is what I'm trying to say. Some of these estimates could be a couple months old, which means they're already getting hit by inflation numbers as they continue to age. We do have contingency built into our projects. We do have our CIP reserve. Both of those mechanisms to some extent are meant to help absorb those cost increases as we continue to progress. So I said there would be some projects of note. So again, 10.7% for the existing projects. These were some that either decreased in scope or increased, and I wanted to explain why. They were the outliers, so to speak. Camelback, we're pretty familiar with why that scope decreased. Our brine disposal project, we previously had our worst case scenario assumed in there. We've now decided on a path moving forward, which has to do with working with APS to connect with our effluent line from Phoenix. So that came in at about, again, $15 million cheaper than what we had programmed into the CIP last year. That option did. If you look at the project increase side of things, Fire Station 182. So this is just one of the examples of we previously had a staff estimate. Now we have an actual contractor estimate. We have actual dollars. So that was a difference, and that caused an increase there. If you look at our Fire Station 188 in West Goodyear, this hasn't been fully vetted yet in full disclosure. So you might be hearing something about this in the future, but it's going through, just so you know, our normal CCR process to vet that internally with our staff before it comes in front of council for any changes that might occur. And last but not least, our Australia Bridge project. So similar to a lot of our transportation projects, the increases year over year, we were further along in design, further along in our study, and we have better costs. So it's not uncommon to see close to 20% increases with a lot of our transportation projects year over year.
Can we pause here for a second?
Yes.
Quick question on the fire station. Don't we use the same template? Shouldn't it be pretty close from 182 to 188, other than, I guess, the increase in some of the supplies and materials that are coming in? Go ahead, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paul Louisi, Interim Deputy City Manager and Fire Chief. So we are using the same template. We had a different architect work on that project for us, but because of increasing costs for construction materials, et cetera, and also some of the work that needs to occur on site. Don't forget we have the RID on the west side of that property that needs to be addressed, as well as some of the half street improvements. So a lot of those have played into the increased cost for that station, but the template is the same.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
No, not for that project specifically. Transportation projects is what I said in general. It wasn't uncommon to see 20% increases for transportation projects. Again, we're working through it. I don't know the exact dollar off the top of my head, but it would be above and beyond what the normal inflation dollars that you would expect to see.
I thought we changed the template for that substation. I thought because we're adding the police substation, expanding the footprint, I thought we were there as well. I know it's the fire, but I thought we were also adding a police substation.
Right. So on the PD side, we've delayed that until fiscal year 25.
Oh, okay.
Because of staffing.
Okay. Okay. So it will be a expansion potentially in the future, not all at once.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
And if I could, I just looked real quick. For Fire Station 188, what's in the budget currently is $13.9 million. And the tentative increase that's included in the budget is 2.8 million more. And that is 20% increase. It's just under a 20% increase. And that is something, again, we're going through. We do anytime a budget increases like this that has been fully funded like the fire station was, we really go through a thorough vetting process of it. We wanted to make sure we had the authority in here if needed, but that will be fully vetted before we move forward with something.
Okay, thank you.
So that's a high level of the existing projects in there. Again, the focus is going to be more on the new projects because they haven't been seen by anybody before. So that's just to get you comfortable with the methodology of what's existing and why it's there. The question arose, I believe, of were there any projects in the CIP last year that are not in the CIP this year? There is only one project that actually fell out. It had to do with the shifting of our badges. They're currently being, Public Works is currently over that process. It's being shifted to the police department. That is going to happen. But there is an existing enhancement that they were going to do with that we don't deem as necessary at the current time. So while the shifting of responsibility is happening, the dollars associated with that project are not for today. There are several projects that existed that based on new scopes or based on new strategies have been combined into one. So they might not exist in the form that you saw them in last year's CIP, but they are still in there. So anything that the public has heard of that was in our CIP project last year should still be in our CIP this year as well, minus the one I just mentioned. So with that being said about existing projects, if the focus shifts to new projects, again, we're talking about 33% approximately of our $502 million budget. That means there's about 84 projects out there that are new. This is just meant to show you the same bucketization of those projects by the reimbursement, asset management, enterprise funds. We have a catch-all, which is all others, and then we have our transportation projects. Again, these are just new projects. So there were no reimbursement projects. Those are easy. We won't have to talk about those. Asset management, just so everybody should be aware of what that is, but asset management is just replacing existing assets that we already own, and that is funded through the general fund. So we don't typically talk about those because our general fund is sustainable. We don't have to worry about those costs, and that's being looked at every single year in updating costs, just like any other project in the CIP. I do want to note the active project count at the bottom. If you're trying to do math and add those up, those will not add up to the 84 new projects that we're proposing. That is just showing how many projects are active in any particular year. So if a project spans 2 or 3 fiscal years, it's going to show up in that number in each of those years that you're seeing on the slide in front of you. Yes, Councilmember Bray.
On that, the reimbursement, so there's no reimbursements. Just help me understand, one of the things we talked about was improving some streets, and then as we did that later on, we would go back to the developer and get those reimbursements. So is that something completely outside of this scope, or something we just haven't put together?
That is not something that we consider a reimbursement project. That would fall under our transportation, under our cost recovery. And we do have those projects. We can tell you if we believe we have a cost recovery element related to any of those projects as we cover those. But that would fall under the transportation section for you to answer your question.
Go ahead.
So with us being comfortable with reimbursements and asset management, the next bucket that we'll cover then are our enterprise funds. We're trying to go kind of take out small bites, the easiest to the most difficult. So we'll try to cover our enterprise funds. Again, self-sufficient. They have the funds to cover these projects. There is $108 million of new projects being proposed. We're going to basically look at 3 of them here today. And from these 3 projects, one of them sticks out. I will note that you can see the first year of the expenditures. All of these projects are out in the outer years of our CIP. Nothing that you're looking at from the enterprise fund of any substantial nature is something that we're going to be funding this year or even next year. So the Goodyear Water Reclamation Facility expansion, it's going to be primarily funded through DIF fees. And this is to increase our facility capacity from 6 MGD to 9 MGD. That's millions of gallons of water per day. So our staff monitors and reports on incoming sewage flows and regulatory agencies as required per various plant permits. And once these incoming sewage flows reach 80% of our current design capacity, we run into issues with permit compliance. So based on our projections, our current treatment plant flows, we believe these triggers will happen around the 2027 timeframe.
And before you flip from that, just to follow along in your books, all the CIP projects for enterprise funds start on page 173 on your book, and it'll have a complete listing of the enterprise fund projects.
Thank you, Doug.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The direct potable reuse pilot, is that what we talked about during our council retreat? Is that toilet to tap?
It is.
And that's our pilot. We're going to do that. All right, thank you.
Do you have a question, Vice Mayor? Oh. Campbell? Oh. Okay. Councilmember Ray?
The recharge facility on Bullard, this is just, I guess, a little off, but is that always going to stay the recharge facility, or is there something moving forward or expansion there, or maybe getting rid of it in that particular location since it's kind of prime real estate?
That is a good question. I don't know if I have the answer to that one.
Here comes
Javier.
On Bullard and Yuma.
Yeah, it's actually Estrella and you.
Estrella, you're right, yes.
No, great question. So the ultimate plan would be that when the DPR is in place, then all of our effluent would be treated to potable standards. And so we would not need that recharge facility anymore.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
I do want to really quick, I said we all understand what asset management is, but I do want to respond really quick to Councilmember Stip's question on the fire apparatus. So every apparatus that we have in our CIP should be part of our asset management program. It should be replacements. Anything that would be related to our new fire stations would be included in the CIP project, but as part of the supplemental. So it's all funded. Everything in there should be accounted for. If there's any specific question on number of apparatus, I don't know if I'll be able to reconcile them off the top of my head, but we can definitely come back with any answers if Councilmember Stip has any additional questions related to those.
Let's ask him. Councilmember Stip?
Ryan, I don't know that my questions are really pertinent for the discussion tonight. if they're burning me up for the next 3 weeks while I'm gone, I'll email them over. If not, we'll let it fly. I appreciate going forward on that.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Again, this is 3 big projects make up, again, almost $88 million of the $108 million of new projects related to our enterprise funds. So they're really 3 big chunks here.
Go ahead.
So this is our catch-all bucket of projects that didn't specifically fall under any other category that made sense. So the first one listed on here is our construction of our new police substation. That was related to Fire Station 188, and the decision was made internally that we didn't see the cost savings that we thought we were going to by building those at the same time. So we're shifting out the timing to 2025. Our staffing needs should be equivalent to, we will fill that at that point in time, and that does actually fall in line with our how it is originally planned for in our IIP.
That's when it's to be finished?
That is when it is started to be constructed.
Okay,
Question.
okay.
Councilmember Brady, you got a question?
On the Bullard Wash improvement, I know we talked about this a little bit when I did my tour on that deal. My question is, there was a portion of that we were working with the farmers up there, and that's part of that whole tailwater situation. So my question is that the appropriate, is it an appropriate time to spend that kind of money when, if you look at the development, I'm going to guess that more and more of those lands are not going to be an issue?
This ties in with, I believe, Council Member Stip's concern that he had. Currently, this project is on hold. We're reevaluating. I believe that was mentioned earlier. But if you'd like to provide any additional insight into that, Javier,
Sure,
I'd appreciate that.
We have developed a design concept that would essentially tackle the flow issues that we had. Our next move, and we've already reached out to Pebble Creek because we're working conjunctively with them, is to sit down and assess what do we do next? Do we spend the money or not? Because we have not seen flows in that Bullard Wash for a while. So I think it's time for us to assess what has happened since we started this and develop a strategy to move forward. I would hate to spend that amount of money for a problem that doesn't exist anymore. So we're watching it closely. I spoke with Pebble Creek last week. They haven't seen any significant flows since about December. So
I think ultimately it would probably be beneficial we go upstream and just talk to those landowners to see, are they going to continue to cultivate it or not? My guess is most of that now is either platted for some sort of a commercial building or is already that way, right? And so
it stands to reason that when development is much more advanced up north, that the flows will definitely change for the better for us. Yeah. So it's a decision point that we're going to be reaching soon. Do we move forward or not with this project?
yeah, it sounds like you're on top of it, but I would hesitate to spend that kind of money when the landscape is significantly changing up there.
It's a great observations.
Yeah, it's my understanding they're not, so unless things change, right? I mean, it's on hold.
We're not moving forward to the next phase yet until we look into it a lot more.
But we just have to have the money available in case something comes, because once that tailwater starts coming down, we get flooded out.
Absolutely.
And Patrick, it maroons our community completely. Our roads are just overtaken with water. And the one section on Eagles Nest side is actually hostage because we have to go out the gate and drive 1.5 miles to come in the other gate to go to the.
Oh, absolutely. I don't doubt that
it's a mess.
There's a problem there. I think that, I'm going to guess that there's probably a cheaper solution there to catch runoff in whatever, maybe a sump or something else. But I guarantee you a farmer will build you a sump for a lot less than that and catch all that water before it gets into the wash. I just think there's other options there than.
There probably is,
That's a big chunk of money to spend for what I believe is probably a temporary problem.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you is that once the development happens up the north, you're gonna see that getting mitigated, hopefully, because it won't be cultivated, it won't be farmed. So you won't have that issue. Go ahead.
I was moving on to the Goodyear Municipal Complex tenant improvements. Is that when we move out of these buildings here? And is that for expansion of other users, or is that expansion of city users in this area?
It's for city employees. When the relocation to the new city hall takes place, there'll be departments, IT is slotted to come to the GMC building, and then some other stuff, including the engineering department. Fire will, admin will expand as well. The clinic will be moving to this complex. So we've got some projects ahead of us that are going to be covered by that. So the courts, they're going to see some improvements as well that will sustain for several years.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was, and the court here, you said the court have some expansion as well? Is that,
Not expansion, but we're doing some improvements in this building that will help them sustain for some years while we do some long-term planning.
Okay. No, I was just curious. I saw the Franklin Pierce on there too, and I wasn't sure if, I assumed it was us, but I know if it was like an economic development tenant improvement.
No,
thing,
it's all focused on
like we
city,
do for Franklin Pierce.
city
So,
staff, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can we legally do the Franklin Pierce? I don't want us to be like Huntington University in Peoria.
So just like the tenant improvements we just completed, these would be collected back from them through their lease.
Okay.
So we, as the owner of the property, would do the construction, and then their lease would collect those dollars.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any additional questions?
Anything additional there, Councilmember Stip?
No, my questions have been already asked. I think I would like, though, and I think it'd be appropriate, that before we take any action on the Bullard Wash improvements, while that process is being evaluated, I think we should get a report from city manager's office as far as what was the resolution or what is the plan going forward. I think we have spent a lot of time on that issue, and we should know what the final determination is before it goes forward and have a discussion about it. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
All right, we can get into our new proposed transportation projects next. If you look at the timeline on the top of the slide, 2023, 24, and 25, you'll notice these projects are very much so front-loaded. So this falls in line with the presentation that happened at our work session on 3/21. At that point in time, there were 16 projects proposed with $6.4 million in funding for fiscal year 2023. That has actually changed to 17 projects for $7.4 million. The other project isn't a new project. It was actually a mid-year add. So while we were just presenting what new projects came up now, it is new to the budget process. So I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. So it's 17 projects and $7.4 million versus 16 projects and $6.4 million, which was previously presented at the 3/21 work session. So again, hitting on the timing of the transportation projects. We are constrained based on, again, because this is what funding is available today. If we were to get additional bond funding in the future, you would see probably 25, 26, and 27, that's where those dollars would go. So we've strategically chosen out of the 30, a little over 30 projects that have been proposed, which ones can we afford today, which ones are the highest priority today, and those have been funded in the numbers that you're seeing. There is a little bit of wiggle room with our CIP reserve, so if there's a desire after this at some point to talk through it, maybe not a tonight discussion, but at some point, we have dollars that we would propose plugging in as just design only. We have some of those projects in there already, but we would probably, that would be the best route going forward, to have additional design only projects, assuming that we would get bond authorization in the future and then could roll right into the construction of those projects. So if you're wondering why there aren't dollars in the out years, hopefully that helps explain that a little bit. As we go through the projects on here, I think I may have made Elmo here extinct. Luckily, he wasn't brought up here, but I have the ability to flip back and forth. So, for example, if you want to look at the project here for Bullard Avenue in Yuma, You can see exactly where that is, and we can go back and forth between projects, or I thought we could. All right, I'll do it the old-fashioned way then. So the projects that you're seeing here first, we've categorized these as just traffic signals and ITS. We also have a slide after this that'll be projects that are construction and design, and then we'll have another one that is just design only transportation projects. So the plan for the traffic signals, there will be two that are existing that you'll see in construction in 2023. That is at Clubhouse Drive in McDowell and then Perryville Road in Indian School. For the remaining years of the CIP 24 through 2027, you will see 4 traffic signals being constructed in each one of those years. Going back to how resources are a constraint, ideally, yes, it would be great. We could put all those into 2023 and just get them done with. But we have historically not been able to do any more than 2 traffic signals within a fiscal year. So by putting 4 into them, we're actually pushing our current resource capacity. If we see we're able to deliver on those, that's again where the CIP reserve comes into play. We could expedite some additional traffic signals to move forward if available. Does anybody have any specific questions on these? Want to look at a map?
Yeah, Councilmember Loretano.
I think that would probably be a Hugh question. We were taking over/under bets on how long it would take you to come up here, so.
Somebody's behind.
Yeah, Hugh Biak, City Traffic Engineer. Councilmember Loretano, that project is currently in design. Design is almost completed, and it's scheduled to begin construction early in the upcoming fiscal year, fiscal 23. Correct, yep.
Sherry, is your mic on or did it run out of battery? Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Are you okay?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
I thought I read in the CIP, but I'm not seeing it on any of these slides. We're still doing the traffic light at McDowell and Clubhouse Boulevard, I guess. Is that correct?
Yes, Councilmember Stip. That was one of the existing traffic signals that we had that is being constructed in fiscal year 2023.
Where is Clubhouse Drive? Yeah, oh, it's gate 8.
Out by the Harley Davidson dealer.
Gate, I'm sorry. I never thought we'd put one there, but that's good.
Okay, no, I thought I may have missed something, so thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes?
just out of curiosity, 2 traffic lights a year, what is it just what takes them so long to do that?
I'll probably hand that over to Hugh, but I believe it has to do with, some of it has to do with planning and the timing to procure. But I know you can probably go into that a little bit more detail than what I have.
Sure, Councilmember Bray. What takes some considerable time is, one, the design. Design takes considerable time. We have to account for plan review. Also, it has been alluded to by DSD and also engineering, is the availability of consultants to do the design. A lot of times we have our existing on-call consultants we can use for them, but due to other commitments, sometimes it can take a little bit of time to get that together. So typically we budget 1 full year for design and then another full year for construction. Construction, what we're running into is the lead times on basically traffic signal structures. That's usually the majority of the time needed, why construction takes longer.
And I guess forgive my ignorance, this is not my area of expertise, but a year to design a traffic light, I mean, is that standard across the board?
Generally, Councilmember Bray, generally, yes. There one of the considerations, I mean, drawing the signal itself isn't difficult. We have to deal with the utility conflicts, if there are any, so we have to go through utility review. And there's will be at least 2 reviews by the city, which with the current backlog with our projects, and I should clarify, our CIP projects get put in the queue just like any developer project. So we don't receive any special treatment. We're held to the same review times as any private developer. So we're stuck with the same queue that any other project would have.
Okay, thank you. I guess the questioning is because, I understand a year, but I guess I don't really understand the year. I hear what you're saying. That just is mind-blowing to me that it's like we just started doing traffic lights yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so I guess I would urge staff to maybe look at implementing that lean process and see if there's some redundancy or, I mean, I don't want to jump ahead of the private sector, but there may be some time here where we just need to get ahead of the projects and get this done. That's mind-blowing that it takes a year, an additional year just to get a traffic light in.
Vice Mayor?
Stick on this traffic light. Is each traffic light unique in size and dimensions, or could we order 4 traffic lights that we plan on, or 5 or years ahead, to help with that time of backlog?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Hampton, regarding the signal structures, every intersection is, they can be similar. There are certain sizes. What changes, at least in the city of Goodyear, is we have 2 different styles of structures. We have our modular, which is a more square, rectangular style, and then we have the ADOT structure, which is more tubular. It's a round structure. Generally, for each intersection, the poles are similar. What varies is the length of the mast arm, the arm that the signal heads go on. Historically, let me back up a little bit. In the recent years, as in the last 10 years, we have not stocked them. We have some stock of the older modular poles. Just going back in history, roughly 2007, we used to stock poles, although the economy is much different back then. But more recently, we've been slowly depleting that stock, although we do have some of the modular structures in stock, and we look to use them whenever we can on CIP projects if that's advantageous to the project.
Yeah, I'm just trying to help with lead times. That's all. Looking parallel path stuff for some of the projects to Bray's point about having more lean processes and trying to be lower parallel path, and just so because we want everything. I know we want everything now, but I know it's not practical. So just trying to help those things along. So thank you.
Councilmember Loretano?
And I think Councilmember Bray makes some good points, because that's something I learned when we were talking about traffic signals originally, how much design actually goes into that. And that might be something that we want to look at if it is a traffic or a health and safety issue, that we do get to jump the line. Maybe normally not, but if it's something that's where there's maybe an issue that we need to get something going for safety, that, we say, hey, we need to do that. And I know you guys have done a great job getting stuff like where the high school was and get those through a lot quicker. What is the difference now? I know there was a substantial difference before on the 2 different styles, and then it's kind of creeped closer. What's the difference monetarily for the 2 different styles? One used to be a lot cheaper, but you said it wasn't anymore.
Yeah, the design from ADOT, so just recapping, we have 2 different structures we use for traffic signals. One is the modular, which we continue to use today. That has remained basically unchanged for the last 10, 12 years. And that's what we refer to as the Tempe style or the modular. That's the rectangular square style pole. For ADOT changed their standard within the last 5 years. It's supposed to be due to, won't get into all the details, but basically a stronger pole to meet wind loading. So with that design change, it requires a lot more steel compared to the older design. Also has an increased size in the foundation underground. That also plays into the equation. And that upped the price significantly. Now I think the prices might be within about, I apologize, I don't think I have it in front of me here, but I do believe they're within about $100,000 of each other. Also understand each intersection is different. Obviously, if we do arterial, large intersection, those prices will be slightly higher. If we're doing an arterial collector, for instance, like a intersection of Estrella and Fillmore, that price would be less because the mast arms aren't as long, the poles aren't quite as large. So that's what can vary location to location.
Councilmember Campbell?
I just wonder if we couldn't think ahead, as Councilmember Bray brought up. You would think we would stockpile some of this stuff, not just order it as needed, because especially with the supply chain the way it is now, we're not going to be able to get our things very quickly. But if we'd have had some stored away somewhere, I would hope we could do better than 5 years to get a traffic light installed. I didn't realize it took us that long to get something done. A year just to plan it, a year or two to just build it. I mean, I'd hate to really have a big project. We might not get it done at all. But I don't know how we can do it any better, but we need to think about it. We need to actively see what we can come up with. And we don't use that many ADOT poles, as you know. I would like us to use more because they're cheaper, but historically it's been the Tempe poles, and they're the ones that were so expensive. So, but anyway, I just would like to see us do it a lot quicker.
Councilmember Kano? Oh, you're okay? Councilmember Ray?
So but then back to the budgeting, you know, Ryan, you said 2 in a year is what we get done, but we're budgeting for 4. So, I mean, I could see maybe going 3 to see if like we could give it the old try. But I mean, after this discussion, why are we budgeting for 4 when we know
We're not going to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're setting false expectations for a lot of people. If we're not going to get it done, why are we budgeting for it?
No, we are definitely stretching ourselves, and it is the desire to try to get them done. So I guess the point is, if you don't put 4 in there, you're never going to try for 4. More than, can we actually do this? Is it worth it to take it out? That's not my call, I guess. But yes, we are stretching ourselves to get that done, to your point.
And in discussions with the CIP team, they were telling us that they could do 8. And we wanted to see proof of 4. And once we saw that that actually started moving, that's where the CIP reserve. So I'm hoping we do see the 8 and we can start sliding projects forward. But we wanted to put it into a realistic timeline that was, in my mind, a stretch for them, but what the team says is realistic.
So that's true. The team thinks that you can get 4 of these polls done.
In 5 years.
Is it 4 in this year?
4 every year. In
4
each
in
year.
every year?
4 each year, correct.
That'd be a miracle. Wow.
Yeah, also just to clarify, Councilmember Bray, when it comes to the design timeline, also been reminded too that when it involves land acquisition, typically that's closer to a 1-year process.
Right.
So as an example, Estrella Foothills, we had to acquire an easement to install the traffic signal equipment on one corner, I believe, which thankfully it was a developer, I believe it was with Newland at the time, which moved fairly streamlined. But again, with some property or landowners, it can take longer.
So if you feel you can get 4 done in a year, are we just jamming more into the system? Or how do we go from 2 to all of a sudden we're doubled?
It's Councilmember Bray. It was more related to demand, as in our number of warranted traffic signals. And go back in time a little bit, I think it may have been around the 2015 timeline. That was determined when 2 traffic signals a year was adequate. Obviously, growth was significantly reduced at that time, much slower than what we're used to now. Now we're seeing more develop in more of the outlying areas where, like, for instance, along Camelback, like Cotton and Camelback was one, for example, that required a traffic signal in an area that we didn't anticipate.
Well, I just want to be sure we're putting the right priority in the right order. You know, the ones that really need it the most first, if it's going to take us that long to get them built. And I don't see any priority numbers here at all. So I don't know unless you're telling me Bullard and Yuma's priority 1.
It's not until 2024.
But it's not.
So yeah, so the two that we have existing already are at Clubhouse Drive in McDowell.
That's number one?
They're already in process, so by the timelines, they will come out and you will see them first, yes. Because they're existing projects. These are new projects, so if you think about the timelines we were just talking about, you start it today, it goes forward, you're going to see those roll off the line in that order. So we do have, again, you have, I wouldn't say they're prioritized, but they are prioritized from the standpoint we chose to put them in the CIP to begin with. So if there are other locations that are not listed here as well that we think deserve funding, that would be an additional discussion to have.
Good. One question that has come through, I got from Councilmember Stip is, can we speed up the purchasing of the materials? Yeah. Can we?
Can we? Yeah.
Yes, Mayor Pizzol, yes, we can. On our current CIP projects for this year, we've looked into or are considering, and actually I believe we are moving forward with, working with procurement, is in purchasing the poles ahead of acquiring the contractor to do the work. This will generally save us anywhere from at least 30 to potentially 60 days on lead time of the material.
Okay, that's good. Actually, if I might,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor, while you're up here, this brings back to the whole Estrella underpass question. So we're doing an additional lane there and it's expected to start in July.
Councilmember Bray, yes, I believe that's correct. It's July or August. I believe it is July, though, of this year.
So while I can fully understand we need to get that done, have we looked at what that means for our residents based on all the other stuff that's going on down the pipe? Meaning, when is Jackrabbit going to be completed? I know getting off in the 303 is a disaster, and technically that would probably close Estrella. I mean, have we calculated all of that as well? Because I'd hate to just throw in another project, and then now we're pushing cars clear back to Bullard, or it just seems like a nightmare.
Councilmember Bray, the work under the roadway, the plans are not complete yet. I have to look at what the sequencing is in terms of how the work is staged. Initially, a lot of the work is the RID, Roosevelt Irrigation District pipe that's under the roadway. I'm not sure quite how that impacts traffic. Regarding the traffic further west on I-10, that's obviously run by ADOT, and that's anticipated to be completed, I believe currently it's summer of next year.
And I guess just my point is that I would ask that staff just consider that as they go down the path of getting that project started. There's no doubt we need it done, but at the same time, if you ever come home there, in the evening rush hour, I mean, it is just a disaster already. And to basically, if it were to shut down the underpass at some point in time, I think it will start causing even greater problems for, our citizens. So I know we can't control ADOT. I just ask that we kind of take a more worldly view as to what that impact will have. And if we have to push back the project to give some, alleviate some of that pressure, I think that'd be a smarter way to go.
And just to chime in, it won't answer the questions today, but again, to reinforce, we do have our new transportation manager on board, which will directly be looking at these projects and exactly addressing some of the issues that you might be bringing up. And we have our transportation master plan, which will be also going in depth to everything and the timing and working all that out. So can't necessarily give you the better answer of what it is today or whether this will stay as it is, but we can have more clarity, made confident in what we have more and more as time progresses.
Thank you. Thank you.
You ready to move on? Okay, go ahead.
So I had briefly transitioned to this slide. So are there any questions before I move on? These are the projects outside of traffic signals, outside of ITS, that are both design and construction, have those dollars in the CIP as it sits today.
Questions? Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
The Cotton Lane and Yuma Road Lane addition, is that I'm sure I know it's in conjunction with the ADOT that's going to be going there too. I'm just curious what part, is that the access road or is that the east-west additional road? Get to the ADOT traffic diamond, full diamond that's going to be there.
Vice Mayor Hampton, the question is regarding what portion of Cotton and Yuma?
Yeah, I was just curious what, I see it there now. So it's along, oh, it'll be on the, okay, that side of Yuma. Okay.
Yeah, in this exhibit, there are two different views. So the view we have, yeah, there's the second one. So we had proposed in this project, as an interim project, proposed on this sheet, this is showing Yuma Road. So what you have on the left side of the screen, 173rd Avenue, right side, Cotton Lane, and then Yuma Road is what's going left to right across your screen.
Yeah.
What this proposed improvement would do is add an additional westbound through lane from Cotton Lane to 173rd. This will allow us to get 2 through lanes for westbound Yuma through this intersection. We have the existing pavement east side of the intersection. It's just we're constricted on the west side. We just have the original single lane going westbound.
Yeah. And this is, I think this is smart because, like I said, normally growth would pay for growth. So we're getting ahead of it because normally when that piece of dirt right there gets developed, that's when that will get put in. So.
Yes, Vice Mayor Hampton, you are correct. Typically, this improvement would have been, majority of it would be handled by the adjacent developer.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's smart. So it'll help out a lot right there. So thank you.
Anything else?
To that, now that we're on that slide, what's the plan for the rest of Cotton Lane?
Councilmember Bray, the rest of Cotton Lane, what is going to happen there is the construction of State Route 303.
Which
Right
is
now,
scheduled to be done in 2030?
a little bit sooner. So what we've heard from MAG today is that the current construction is set for 2025. That's what they've allegedly have programmed for. There is potential it could be moved up. That's not official yet, and we don't know precisely that date, but currently it's set for construction 2025. Design is currently ongoing. The design for the roadway will be complete by December of 2023. And that section of 303 would encompass existing Cotton Lane from Lower Buckeye Road to Van Buren Street.
It only gets us to Lower Buckeye Road?
Correct. Yes, Vice Mayor Brad. The reason why is what's going to happen south of there, ADOT and MAG has decided that anything beyond that point will be part of construction of SR 30, as that would involve the approaches and the construction of an interchange at SR 30 and 303.
Which we don't know the time frame of that.
Mm-mm.
Maybe not my lifetime.
Mm-mm. It's crazy.
Anybody else? The only thing I want to add is, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, it's been a night full of passion for me. I was really kind of content until I just heard this conversation. We have kind of collectively failed as a city council in what we've allowed to occur transportation-wise. I have spent a great deal of time driving that southbound and then consequently northbound Saraville and Cotton Lane recently, and it's a horrific drive. And the fact that we have one lane in each direction is only compounding the problem. And I realize we don't want to spend money today to have it torn up. I mean, that's, I come from Chicago. That's what we do all the time. But I honestly think we really need to look at that as an option. That south of Lower Buckeye on Cotton Lane is still one lane, heavily truck trafficked. And it's the secondary way in and out of Estrella. I mean, we kind of we owe our residents, particularly in that area, a much smoother ride than we have given them. So I know Chris is in the audience, and quite frankly, I don't have the confidence that MAG has the ability to pull the trigger on doing this early. And it's frustrating that organization is basically holding their foot on our back and preventing us from being able to get anything done. We have got to move this up. It doesn't matter what the cost is, because I think to Councilmember Bray's point, is it even going to happen in his lifetime? And he's younger than me. So
By a lot.
I haven't been able to say that very often lately. So, please let's give that some serious thought. And I realize it's not a great use of public funds, but I'm pretty sure the public down there doesn't care if we have to throw some bumpy, uncurbed asphalt to create a second lane, and then tear it up, 10 years later. They'll take that all day long instead of sitting in the miles-long traffic jam that they have to. And with that concludes my comments.
Councilmember Stip, I tend to agree with you there. I know we hear from them all the time down there in that development area. We got to find a way to try to relieve that traffic down there. And I appreciate from a dollars and cents, sometimes we're spending money, then in a short period of time, or who knows when, that it's going to be torn up. But we got to do something down there. We hear all the time about the traffic, people cutting through neighborhoods to try to avoid some of that traffic. So I think that should be a priority to figure out how we can really alleviate that traffic down there. I agree with you.
And frankly, I think I think the discussions need to happen now with ADOT and MAG and all of them and say, look, if you're going to go to Lower Buckeye, you might as well keep going, or almost say don't start it at all, because what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're just dumping it back into another 2-lane road for what? That's a highly trafficked area. We've got a lot of industrial down there. So, even if the city had to pony up some money for whatever, maybe design or whatever it is, but that just seems just not as a wise use of funds to stop at Lower Buckeye when they've only got, another 1.5 miles, 2 miles?
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Go ahead. I'm trying to figure, quick question for the city manager. Where do you think would be a good point to pick up on this discussion, would you say, as we kind of go forward, as far as sections are concerned?
So I actually believe we are nearly done, maybe one slide away from finishing the CIP conversation.
Oh, are we? Oh, okay.
Yeah, most of the rest of the slides were attachments of the traffic projects.
Okay. Go ahead.
So to Julie's point, this is the second to last slide. The one prior to that after this is just going to be a recap of transportation, which we're talking about right now. So the last bucket of transportation projects that we have listed are the projects that are design only in here, with the assumption we will need future funding to get into the construction aspect of that. There are actually 4 projects. 3 of them are new. 1 of them is an existing project. But you can see there's only a couple $1 million here from the design aspect. There is an additional about $30 million in construction waiting behind the design aspect that is not in the CIP that will require additional funding to move forward with these projects. And again, if, based on the discussion that I'm hearing, we have our CIP reserve, and there might be some shifting around of things that we can do. But again, those dollars don't go very far when you're talking about $30 million of construction right here. We don't even have half of that available. So again, we're dealing with a finite amount of funds currently for this year's CIP. And again, we've put that together in the way that we think best fits the puzzle that we're trying to piece together. Are there any specific questions to these 3 projects as it relates to?
Do you have the picture? I'm trying to frame a reference for, I think Minnesota is the entrance to, not to the neighborhood, not Sundance. It was Sadea. I just want to verify. It's from Citrus to Minnesota is.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Hampton. I can comment on this one. So this segment of Indian School is from Citrus to Minnesota. Minnesota is the half mile between Citrus and Cotton. On the
Okay.
south side is where the Microsoft data center is located.
Gotcha. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, I'm getting Perryville and Citrus mixed up because Sedea is on the other side there. Okay. Good. Yeah. All the Sedea residents will be happy about that as well. So thank you.
Anything else?
I know you were flipping through there. Are you going to hit the IT?
We have ITS project slides. We have 4 of those if you would like to discuss
Is
ITS.
that for them to put the boxes in the ground?
Yes, I can show you.
I saw the blue markers, but
So we have 4 slides, 4 areas that we're focusing on ITS. One is at Cotton Lane. If you have additional questions, you can go into detail. Indian School.
and are they all going to be done at the same time? Or are you going to go from one block to another block to another block, or 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year? How are we going to do this?
Councilmember Campbell, these projects are ITS projects. These are, majority of them is funded with federal funds through MAG. These are traffic signal equipment projects, so essentially replacing traffic signal controllers, video detection, and some equipment in the cabinet, similar to what we just did on Estrella and soon to do on Litchfield and McDowell as well.
But so
these-
it just be as we get the funds from MAG then?
These are all currently funded in fiscal year 2023. So we're assuming a quick turnaround on that to be able to get these constructed.
Okay, good. It's just, I hate for us to start tearing, our streets have been torn up for so long. Poor Litchfield Road will never be the same. Because we run water lines, we run Southwest gas lines, we've got trucks going in, we've got potholes. I mean, it's just a mess. And so when we start doing this, especially on Cotton Lane, as busy as Cotton Lane is, we've got to be really strategic on how we time it and plan it so we don't knock those folks on their knees again. If you're going to mess up 3 different intersections, please, I mean, let's be smart on how we're going to do this.
So if I could, Hugh, can you describe the construction of these projects? I don't believe these tear up the roads.
Well, but they
The
block
ITS.
off half of it, or they take us down to a lane. They don't just work on the corner.
Yeah,
seen
Councilmember
'em.
Campbell. Oh, sorry. Councilmember Campbell, on these projects, it's just equipment that's located on the mast arm itself, the video detection cameras, and there's an additional box that's added to one of the poles on one corner. Generally,
The truck parks right there and goes up.
generally it shouldn't be more for probably, I'm going to say probably an hour per location or per mast arm
But-
typically.
Okay.
That's typically what the installation time would take. So we'd say generally, and our contractor, actually these would be done by our city forces, but generally it should take, I would say, again, around an hour per mast arm. So generally, morning we'll do one intersection, or the idea would be in the morning we do one intersection, and then we move on to the other, do the other in the afternoon.
But
That
try
would
not to
be,
do it during rush hour if you can.
no, we try to avoid that, and we try to respect, again, the city's traffic control ordinance, which only allows us to block off through lanes between 8:30 a.m. and I believe it's 3 p.m. or 3:30 p.m.
Okay.
We good?
Yep.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so to kind of just wrap up transportation into a nice little ball, I've kind of hit on it from a funding standpoint. This is just to summarize again, the total dollars that we're investing into transportation projects, including fiscal year 2023 out through our 5-year CIP program. So it is a large dollar going in there. And again, you see the tail off of the new projects. We talked about the funding availability and how that will materialize over time. With that being said, that is the end of it. So if I were to summarize, because feel like we breezed through it, but just from a dollar standpoint, again, 2/3 of these dollars existed last year, 10.7% increases on average. Of the new projects, we specifically called out on those slides 133 of the 166 million new dollar projects out there. The only ones that were not shown were asset management, which we know the funding sources for those. And then the enterprise funds, there were a few of those that were not listed, but again, they're self-sustainable. So we've essentially covered everything, and the idea is to get you comfortable with the dollar amount and where everything's coming from. I know to the public, they might not understand, but hopefully council understands the funding sources and how we're explaining why these are viable, is a viable CIP project, viable CIP plan that we've presented tonight. So are there any final questions from anybody?
Hold on. Councilmember Stip, you have anything to end?
No, other than I stayed awake the whole time. Thank you for entertaining my questions from long distance, and I look forward to seeing everybody in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Councilmember Bray?
Ryan, will you go to the previous slide there? It ends in, on the new stuff, it ends in 2025 because that bond authority, we've used up all the bonding authority, correct?
Yes, we prioritize the projects that we want to see moving. That's why they're up in the first years of the CIP versus we could program them out in 26 and 27, but they're not going to do anything today for us. So yes, the dollars that we have available are front-loaded as what you're seeing up there on the screen.
And so the thought process is we go back to the electorate in 2025 to increase or to get new bonding authority?
Our new bonding authority, we can get as early as, that process has already started. So we will be able to, so some of those projects we have that are design only into 23 and 24, the idea is that we will be able to add to that as early as 24, maybe.
November of 2023 is when we would be able to go out to the voters to ask the question for voting authorization. And another piece in here, as Ryan mentioned earlier, the transportation master planning process that's going to get started as well, so that it's not, so that we have a more well thought out approach to our transportation and how we do it in the question that goes to the voters.
Well, if we're going in 2023, then I think that just makes it that much more important that we put pedal to the metal on some of these projects, and sooner the better, so that at least we can use that with the voters and say, look, if you want more of this to go on, we need the bonding authority, and maybe even, like to Councilwoman Campbell's point, you know, prioritize some key areas that they're feeling the relief there, because that's literally right around the corner.
I just want to thank the city manager and everybody for all the information and everything that gave it. It's very helpful, and thank you very much.
Councilmember Kano?
We're really so fortunate that we have so much to take care of and to be concerned about. Can you, and there's been so much information, can you tell me what the timing for the actual construction for the Estrella Bridge would look to be?
So yeah, if I can get my spreadsheet to work here. So we have dollars programmed in 23, 24, and the bulk of it comes in 25, but you will see dirt moving prior to then.
So it's my understanding the bridge closes, then traffic is going to have to come out of Estrella a different way. So is that correct? So Cotton. So I think we've got to address Cotton prior to that for sure.
It's terrible now. Yeah.
That's why we have a transportation manager and all these
They only have
things work
Cerebral
out.
Bridge to get across. Or, I know, yeah.
Councilmember Kano, I can clarify. Estrella Parkway is intended to remain in operation, because what will be is the improvement of that area will be an existing bridge that's constructed next to the existing structure. So the intent is to leave it open during construction. And as for Cotton Lane, the improvement of Cotton Lane between the Gila River Bridge and Estrella Parkway, the roundabout, is, I believe, anticipated to begin design this upcoming year, fiscal 23, with construction in fiscal 24, to make that from an existing 2-lane roadway to 4 lanes.
Well, let's go, Councilmember Campbell.
No, I'm not, I'm
Nope.
done.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, no, I want to say thank you to all the hard work of the staff and everything. I mean, this is one of our most important jobs as elected here, to set the tone and the direction of the city through the budget. So I appreciate everybody's work to help put it together. And yeah, I think the bonding would be a great opportunity to potentially do a lot of good things, especially when it comes to roads as a big pain point for our citizens. And I could see them wanting to vote yes for that kind of bonding capacity. So, so I appreciate it. Thank you for the hard work.
Thank you very much.
Let's thank staff. I know you're up here doing the presentation, but I know we've got a lot of people behind the scenes that help you as well, and I appreciate the presentation and the information. So thank them for all the hard work they have done. I know we got a lot in front of us. I know as the streets has been mentioned in here before. We got to make sure, because I had somebody come up with the other day, says, every road I'm riding on has got road work. It would be nice, I know we've got a lot of work to do, but to schedule it in such a way, the minimum impact of people traveling through the city. Unfortunately, we're the ninth fastest growing, I guess second in the state, and it is what it is. So we got to make these improvements, and the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be. So you got a lot of work cut out in front of you. So with that, anything else? Does the council have any comments, commendations, or reports, or current events, or requests you want to share with anybody at this time? Does the city manager have anything? I think we've been here long enough, right? All right, there's a tentative, well, I guess for May 2nd, we're going to need that tentative person. May 2nd, manager?
Sorry, what was?
It says here, there's a tentative budget work session scheduled for May 2nd.
I do not believe that we now need that.
Okay.
So this would be our last budget work session until we come back for tentative adoption.
Okay, sounds good. Then if there's no further business, meeting's adjourned.